All right, let's get started. How's it going, everybody? If you can hear me, please give me a thumbs up. If you're on YouTube Live, please let me know audio is all good. So we can get started. Perfect. This is good. Any questions? Oh, Peter jumping up right away. Perfect. This is really good. Thank you very much, everybody, for Peter. Go ahead.
Thank you. NVIDIA is down like 8%. Any comments on that?
There's more to go. Are you an investor or a short or what?
I have a little bit of NVIDIA, but it's, long time. So if, 10% don't really care that much if it drops that by 10 or 20%.
Are you long or short?
I'm long. I'm just saying that I've bought my shares a long time ago. So I'm still ahead, even if it drops, by a lot.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I said, yeah, I wrote like a bunch of articles on the chip stocks, like 6, 7 articles. I think all of them are overvalued except for maybe TSMC is fairly valued. That's about it. Brent?
Hey, just joined. Happy to be here. Happy Friday.
What did you want to ask yesterday?
Honestly, don't remember. I think it was around just the hardware and the Robotaxi and whether or not it'll be different compared to what we see today.
Okay, Peter?
Yeah, so I've been listening to the last few spaces, and there's been a lot of discussion around Robotaxi, obviously. I was kind of wondering if anybody has thought about how the Robotaxi business model would actually work. I've seen people like some people have suggested that the Robotaxi could make 50 and up to $150,000 per year for the owner, which seems extremely frothy to me. But if Tesla owns these robotaxis, right, then that means they have to carry them on their balance sheet, and that's a liability, right? So if they're going to run these robotaxi networks across, multiple cities, that would be a huge drain on their cash flow, I think, initially, just to get this thing wrapped up and deployed. Has anybody kind of thought about how that business model would work and all the accounting around it and financing?
Brent, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree that having all the assets on your balance sheet definitely would require some level of financing. I think that you do have to deal with that to capture more of the value chain and ultimately more of the profit from that business model. I don't have a strong perspective, but I guess in my mind, if you wanted to maximize the earnings from building robotaxis, you would earn them. I mean, you would just figure out how to finance it, how to manage it. It's a lot of logistical complexity, but rather than having every robotaxi owner making 30K a year, you would just make 30K extra a year per robotaxi.
Peter?
Yeah, I understand that, but I think I agree that there's a lot to it. A lot of kind of financial maneuvering would have to happen because, like Uber, they don't own the cars. Actually, people own the cars, and they just sort of like rent the car, right? And you're responsible for the maintenance, upkeep, and all the payments and everything, right? So they're completely not in that business. So from that perspective, it's a completely different business model, I think, than Uber at the end, right?
Yeah, I mean, agreed 100%. Capital light, capital intensive. I mean, there are huge differences between the two for sure. I mean, I do think, this is just purely my opinion.
Just 1 second. 1 second, guys. We have Fred Lambert in the audience. If he wants to come up, change the topics, he's welcome to do so. welcome everybody. I don't block anybody. Everyone's welcome to join and request to speak, etc. All right, Grant, continue.
Was just saying I don't know that there's a right answer. I think there are pros and cons of owning the robotaxis or not. My personal opinion, if it was me making the decision, I would probably try to own them, in part because I think it's probably going to be scoped to start. I don't think that you're going to turn on 2 million robotaxis on day one. I think you would roll them out, gradually into jurisdictions that are comfortable with it. So you could probably scale the logistical elements of it in line with the actual number of robotaxis on the road. And I think you'd have a better growth story at the end of the day, better profit. I mean, maybe not better profitability, but you'd be capturing more in aggregate, maybe not more margins compared to an asset-light model, but that's how I think about it.
Okay, Wessex, let's take some turns. Wessex.
Hey guys. Yeah, just on the Robotaxi, I think it's going to cash flow real quick, where this is really a non-issue. First of all, you have the whole fleet right now, which they don't have to worry about. That's just pure gross margin, pure revenue, pure gross margin for everybody's car that goes out in Robotaxi fleet. And what I think they'll probably do is, as they start creating these new vehicles, they'll put a lot in one city. They'll kind of go city after, who knows if I'm right? Could be wrong. But the way I would monetize this is I would start going after Austin, Nashville, whatever, and just focus on concentrating that particular city. So this becomes a viable service for everybody very quickly. So I'm not concerned about the cash flow. I think it's a non-issue.
Okay, Pennington and then Peter.
Did you guys hear the podcast between Bill Gurley and Brad Gerstner? And they actually went into some detail about pricing the Robotaxi network.
I didn't. Why don't you tell us about it a little bit?
So their basic thesis was that they were comparing the cost between a Robotaxi network and an Uber network. And the conclusion was that Tesla or any entity entering robotaxis, if they were to own the vehicles, they would need to drop the cost per vehicle to around $25,000 or less in order for this to be cash flow positive, because of all the other costs that are just incumbent with owning and maintaining your own vehicles. So they were of the belief that unless the cost was able to be driven down considerably from what it is right now, that it would be harder to make money. Now, yes, the profit would be higher, but your cost would be much higher. So your actual margin itself is not really going to go up that much. So that was their opinion on modeling this out.
Peter?
Yeah, thank you for that. I hope that somebody actually includes that in their analysis, because when I look at people like Cerner Basher, who kind of created that initial model, I don't think he really accounts for the initial costs of ramping up the production, obviously, of a completely new car, right? Because we're talking about a whole new box architecture, so it's going to be more expensive initially, and then actually all the logistics of rolling this out and actually making it cash flow positive eventually, right? Like, there's so much stuff, and that's even assuming after FSD is actually Robotaxi level, right? Thank you.
Omar, welcome. How are you?
Hey, doing good.
We're talking about Robotaxi economics. Grant?
Yeah, I would also like to see a detailed analysis. The other thing that I'll call out that I don't feel like I've seen in the analyses, and different ways of thinking about it, but just the volume of rides that this would actually involve. I think Uber has 2 million drivers today. Obviously, if there's a really cost-effective way to use robotaxis, people will use more of them. But sometimes when people are saying like every one of these things is going to be used constantly, I just wonder what that all implies from the stance of number of rides, number of miles, just how much is a typical consumer spending with this service. I don't know that I'm always seeing it grounded in those terms.
Pennington, did you come off mute?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's just when you own the vehicle and you have to pay the insurance on the vehicle and you have to maintain the vehicle, other than insurance, those are not costs that Uber has to incur for their model. So we'll see, perhaps as this thing matures, maybe there's a real partnership that takes place between Uber and Tesla, and maybe by that time they're able to manufacture cars for $25,000 or less, which is obviously their ambition, in which case the economics of this model will increase. But obviously we sort of need to get to that point. This will be a brand new model, a brand new world. So it's so hypothetical right now, but it's clearly different from what has been. So there's just that unknown that it would be nice for Tesla to explain. And I did see one of the questions for the shareholder meeting was to explain that. So hopefully we'll get some more information on that, whether it's in the earnings call next week or in the shareholder meeting.
Thank you. So as a reminder, I know we have a few new listeners in this space right now. This space is open daily, 2 p.m. Central Time. We go on for about 2-3 hours, talk primarily Tesla, and discuss technologies through Tesla. Very different topics, and encourage diverse opinions from many people. Everybody is welcome to request to speak, and when they come up, they have to abide by certain rules of the space. Raise your hands, don't go on with run-on sentences forever. I sometimes cut people off if necessary, but we try to encourage them, apply the same rules to everybody. As long as everybody respects each other, we have very diverse, fruitful discussions, and everybody's welcome to request to speak. Any questions, comments? You may request to speak. Wes and then Grant.
Yeah, I guess I really don't understand the concern. When you think about it, we probably have about 2 million Teslas currently in the United States. And when this gets turned on, whichever one of those participates in this program will bring an immediate positive cash flow for the company. So really the only thing we're talking about here is the new vehicles that are being made, which will come out slowly. And as they ramp up the speed of production, they'll kind of come on the scene, if you will. But it's going to be a small percentage initially of the total fleet that is making money across the country. So I just don't see this as an issue.
I don't see free cash flow as an issue either. The cost of producing these robotaxis purposeful robotaxi is going to be much lower than any other Tesla produced. And like West 6 points out, they're going to start producing cash flow very quickly. And nobody has so far made any prediction on when this is going to happen. We're just talking about when it does happen, what does the economics look like? Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, so first, definitely agree with what people are saying. I mean, a lower cost vehicle will have better economics from a robotaxi perspective. To go back to the concerns around the cost of maintaining it, I would just point out that stuff is going to be an expense regardless of which side of the equation you're on. If Tesla owns them, that's going to be an expense Tesla will have to bear. I would guess they could probably do it at scale and systematize it and do it more efficiently than an individual owner. So if it's not profitable for Tesla to do it, I would be concerned that it would be less profitable for an individual person to do it. Like your, Model X probably isn't going to be a good robotaxi.
Yeah, I saw these some of the predictions that people are throwing out that a robotaxi or your Tesla is going to generate $50,000 or $5,000, $4,000 a month, $50,000 a year for you, or even higher numbers. Even Elon didn't say so back in Master Plan Part 2. He kind of just mentioned that income will go to pay towards your monthly payments. So that kind of implies a few $100 a month, and that's a maybe. And that was back in 2016. Okay, obviously a lot has changed since then. As early as 2019, he said each robotaxi will generate $30,000 gross profits per year. But he didn't say how that money would be allocated between the owner of a Tesla and to Tesla itself through a revenue share kind of model, maybe. So there's a lot that's still to be determined. Omar, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's obviously very speculative, but I think you could it depends, I think, a lot per person. If you live like me in San Francisco and there's a lot of ride demand in a very small area, then you could make quite a bit of money, maybe potentially even more than $30,000, depending on how much you're willing to let it go out there. But if you live in a farm in the middle of nowhere, there probably isn't a lot of rideshare demand near you. Or any rideshare demand would cost you so much to go serve that ride, say, 20 miles away or something, that there probably isn't that much value for you. So I think it really depends. But if you imagine a world where sort of all the base load travel and transit demand moves to a robotaxi system because it can offer a lower cost per mile, and let's say the market expands even conservatively 20% or something like that from new use cases that didn't exist before, kids driving around, um, other types of deliveries or things that didn't exist before, then you, I think, end up with a pretty large market. So it could be the case that if this is sort of how most transportation demand is handled, there could be a pretty large market for car owners to take advantage of that. Of course, there'd be expenses. They'd have to pay for car washes, flat tires, any maintenance the car needs. So that'd be an expense they'd have to bear, and that might factor into the equation too. But we have a pretty good model in the rideshare business that exists today of what that could look like.
Machine?
I noticed your favorite French Canadian blogger left as soon as you said part deux, or however you mispronounced it
No,
in
no,
French.
he wasn't. He was here for that,
I
but he
know.
left that. Yeah.
And then he heard that, disgusted by the accent, and he left. And which is
Listen,
funny.
I speak French. Okay, je parle français, monsieur. Well, how much
Yeah,
French do you
on
speak?
poo. On poo.
No, it's not poo. That's what you do every
Huh.
day. It's huh.
And this guy, first of all, these French Canadians, like, who do they think they are? You're not even French. They have an obnoxious accent. And just like your friend Michel, who, by the way, tracks himself on Strava on his bicycling to McDonald's. How embarrassing is you speak French and you go to McDonald's? Like, that's the opposite of fancy. Anyways, my question was, did you see the this rumor that there's some supplier to Giga Shanghai who claims they're going to cut production of some supply parts by 30%? Comments?
It's a rumor, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was true. It wouldn't surprise you.
I mean, 30% drop in production would surprise me a bit. I'm not surprised that there would be some pullback, but 30% is a lot, especially from your factory that's your lowest cost to produce.
It's also the most intense competition over there, though.
Yeah. But I mean, you send some of those to Europe, but I guess you can't slow down Berlin because of probably labor rules or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, first of all, it's a rumor. There may be some truth to it, there may not, I don't know. But it's usually a bad idea to jump to conclusions on things like this. It could be they just had a bunch of extra parts. It could be that, you know, they're doing something else. Maybe they're removing the part. Who knows? But I mean, you can just see the delivery numbers. They put them out in China. So it's no secret what their production and deliveries are. There's pretty granular data available in that market.
All right, I'm gonna reach out to Fred and see if he left because I mispronounced the. Let's switch topics a little bit while I do that. I mean, obviously, there's gonna be another Robotaxi economics space on Saturday, tomorrow at 7 p.m. on Adrian's account. So we'll all be there to listen to it. But you guys, Omar, what do you think about Koguan's Leo Koguan's? He came out and said he's going to vote against Elon.
Well, I don't know how many shares he really has. Somebody said, 27 million or something like that. My understanding is he would play a lot with options. So how many shares he really holds, I'm not sure. But even if he has 27 million shares, we're talking about less than 1% of the outstanding total. It's not going to make or break the vote on its own, obviously. But if it's indicative of a broader trend, and many other shareholders vote the way he does, certainly there's some other shareholders who are frustrated, then it could be worrying. So, if I understand correctly, they need to get like 51% to pass it, right? So he's less than that extra 1% they need. It's kind of like a rounding error on its own. So it's not that material in terms of his decision, but if many people sort of sympathize with him and want to vote the same way, then yeah, absolutely, they could lose the vote.
Machine, have you been following our discussions about Elon's comp? I mean, yeah, you've been part of it a couple of days ago. Were you here yesterday for it?
No, I probably got bored of it by then. But on the topic of this time machine predictor guy, Koguan, whatever, this guy's crazy. I mean, he's nuts. So I wouldn't take anything he does.
Why do you say that?
Have you read his things about like the KQID time machine?
Yeah, I read it. Yeah.
So, but I think the big picture, the interesting thing I didn't think about before is, for us who invested in the company many years ago, and you saw a nice return, you have a very clear line of thought. You're like, this CEO brought a lot of return on investment for everyone, and we're happy no matter what's happened in the last few years. But I believe people like this guy, I think he only started investing heavily like just a few years ago. So I don't even know if he's made money. And there's a lot of people like that now. Right? There's a lot of people in your spaces who are just 18 now, or they live at home with their parents, and they were too young at the time to invest, and now they're invested the last few years, and they've seen probably a loss. And meanwhile, they see the CEO wanting a vote to get billions of dollars. For them, they perceive that he hasn't done much for them, which obviously is debatable. But I'm just saying that's their perception. So for those people, it's probably understandable a little bit why they may vote against it, but I don't think that they're anywhere near a majority. So it's just something to kind of think about and keep track, but that's all.
Yeah, that makes sense. My good perspective. Good job. We're doing a good day today. Is Meta in here yet? No. Grant? So Machine doesn't think that there's any chance this comp plan isn't going to pass. Is that right, Machine? Or it's unlikely, very unlikely, you're saying, basically?
Well, I'm just saying from the retail investor side, I don't think they're going to be a large percentage against the comp plan, because I don't think the majority of investors are.
What do you think? What do you think the institutional investors?
I have no idea.
No idea?
I just think they're smart enough to understand that if they vote, at least for some of them, if they vote no, the things we talked about yesterday in terms of probabilities of what that would do to the share price would be very destructive to their own investment. So I think they're smart enough to understand that aspect. Maybe some of them still think the company, would operate better and make more money without him or something like that, and it's not worth that payout, even if in the short term there would be a hit. But I still think most of them would think it's not a good idea for themselves. But there are crazy people out there. There are people who, never mind. I'm not going to get into politics.
Fred responded and says he did not leave because I mispronounced the. He said, let me just read you his exact words, Machine. You pronounced it pretty well. Boom.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's probably the best thing you've ever done in this space.
I actually won an award in my high school for French. I don't know if you know this.
Well, congrats. I mean, it's a worthless language.
I won a certificate.
That's
it's
good.
the language of romance, which explains why you think it's useless. When was the last time you romanced? Anyway, Fred is back, so let's bring him up and continue to talk about Leo Koguan and his kind of interview with him and article with him. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to say I listened on the YouTube live last night that you posted. So thanks for posting those there. It's good to be able to go and see what people talked about. Maybe in the future there's chapters would be nice, but it's great for now. Question. So I'm trying to figure out what the purpose of the vote is in the first place. Obviously, it was approved by shareholders in 2018, but I'm just trying to understand, why are we even having this vote in the first place?
Okay, Omar, would you like to explain it to Clay real quick? And now we're going to switch to Fred and get his thoughts on the recent article that he published. And if they're going to switch.
Well, to make a long story short, in 2018, a novel compensation package structure was proposed for Musk, where he would get paid nothing, but depending on certain milestones being achieved, market cap milestones, revenue milestones, EBITDA milestones, he would be granted certain tranches of stock options that would allow him to purchase up to 10% of the company. So the plan passed, shareholders approved it overwhelmingly, I think by about 80%. And we all know Tesla had a huge run. They ended up meeting all of those milestones. He qualified for all of the tranches of the pay package. Then there was a shareholder litigation. Somebody sued. Anybody can sue if you have shares over, shareholder issues. And they said that Musk's compensation package was unfair. The onus was really on them to prove that the compensation package was given fairly. And the judge struck it down, saying that there was an adequate disclosure of some of the relationships between the board members and Musk, and that they might not have negotiated as vigorously as they should in giving him, only what was sufficient to incentivize him to do the job. So they struck down that pay package, and now we're going to another vote on these two issues, whether to reaffirm the pay package with the appropriate disclosures, and also on whether to move the state's reincorporation to Texas, which is kind of a reaction to the Delaware court decision as well.
Thank you for the overview. That's excellent. Fred, welcome. First time in this space, and it's really nice to have you here. How are you?
Doing pretty good, thank you.
Good. Can you please tell Machine that I pronounced the just fine?
Yeah, just fine, yeah.
That was a weak
Okay.
support.
Exactly. It's okay. Good. Okay.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, even better now. Thank you. What are your thoughts? So we all read your article on Leo, coming out and saying he's going to vote against Elon. How was that, process worked for you behind the scenes? Did you reach out to him? Did he reach out to you? Did you guys talk on the phone? Anything you can share, but you don't have to, obviously, if you don't want to.
No, I talked to Leo times to times. I think he has an interesting perspective on Tesla. He's been investing heavily in the stock, obviously, for a long time. He's a huge fan of Tesla's mission, like a lot of us. And lately he's been frustrated about some of Elon's actions, and more specifically, I think the board's action in they're not restricting some of Elon's doing these days. So I think it's a weird situation we're in right now, because I agree with the way Omar described the situation. I think everything he said was accurate, and effectively right now shareholders are just re-voting on the exact same plan. So the unfortunate part here is that it's not really what's going to happen. Obviously, like, it's not, we cannot get a time machine, go back to 2018 and just vote with everything that the judge just said. Like, that would be the ideal situation. People are using it more as like a vote of confidence on Elon and a vote of confidence on the board. And I think that's how Leo is seeing it now. Is just he's frustrated not to have an opportunity to talk to the board, talk to Tesla, share his concern. So now he's using his only way to do anything, which is vote his share on that direction.
Sure. And obviously that's his right to do so as a shareholder. And thank you for that overview. How do you think it's going to kind of play out in the coming weeks, specifically for this vote? Let's focus on that for a second. Obviously, there are other proposals, but let's focus on Elon's pump for a second.
I mean, I think, well, obviously Tesla has more view, like a lot more insight into this, and I think they are worried. Like the Support Tesla Value website, I think that's a clear indicator that the Tesla is at least concerned to some degree that the vote is going to be tighter than the last time, which was about 73% of the share if you take Elon out of it, Kimball out of it. So it could get close. Like I honestly don't know. Like, obviously Leo is the biggest retail shareholder, but he still owns a little bit short of 1% of the stock. So there's a lot at play. Looks like it's going to be about 50-50 institutional investors and retail investors after you take off Elon shares. Yeah, it could come down to like a razor edge kind of situation where every vote counts.
Yeah, and we talked over the last couple of days that it's probably going to be closer than people think. And people thought generally the website that Tesla created was helpful.
Sorry, the website was what?
I think
And all the you guys don't hear me?
Now I do.
What are you messing around with, Iman?
I'm not messing. Can you guys hear me? Oh my gosh.
Can hear you right now. Don't do anything else.
I'm not doing anything else. I'm literally standing like a mum. What I'm
Ask the
saying
question
is,
again to Fred.
Fred, did you think the website was helpful as well, as many people mentioned here over the last couple of days?
Was the website helpful? Is that what you're asking?
Right.
I mean, I think the website is a bit misleading. Like, I think a lot of like Elon, the narrative that he's been pushing, and now Tesla through this website and through the proxy statement, is kind of just like that. The judge took away the shareholders' vote, took away their own decision making, and all that. And they really have never, as far as I can tell, addressed the core of the issue that the judge had, which was the governance issue at Tesla. So they have not addressed that. And I think that's the biggest issue that people are seeing. Like, I think there's a lot of shareholders right now that feel like Elon Musk can do whatever he wants. I think that's been exposed to like some of the conflict of interest of the AI stuff, and some of the like volunteering, like encouraging Tesla engineers to volunteer at Twitter, which looks to have been only approved by Tesla's board after the fact. So a lot of these things are concerning for a public company. Like, a lot of people are starting to use the word tunneling resources issue, which is we know that some executive at public companies have been caught doing that lately. And like, I don't think Elon is doing that maliciously or anything like that. I just don't think that he's well suited to run a public company, and I think he's admitted that himself several times. Like, he's kind of regretted bringing Tesla public. So I think these issues are now showing that he just doesn't want to be running a public company, and the Tesla board is not doing anything about it.
Okay. Well, let's get Omar's view on this. Obviously, there are some people who agree with what Fred said. He's not going to, he's voicing some concern from some shareholders. And Fred, when you jumped off as we were talking about Robotaxi, we switched to talking about this, and Machine mentioned a good perspective. Maybe the people who invested in the company before 2020, they've seen some of these things over the years, and they've seen the returns of the 2020 period. But the people who came after that period, they've only seen declines. And maybe there might be some sort of a kind of black and white between those two groups going on a bit too, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Though in the case of Leo, for example, that he doesn't fit in that description. He's been heavily investing in Tesla since prior to 2020. So yeah, I'm sure you're right, but everyone has a different experience.
Okay, Omar, what do you think about some of the things that Fred said?
Well, I think this vote really couldn't be coming at a worst possible time for Elon. You look at the stock at 52-week lows. You look at deliveries down year over year, which is extremely rare for Tesla. I mean, you couldn't pick a time where more people are angry about Elon, politics, buying X, all these things, than now. So, I mean, if there's a tough time to do this vote, it's now. And after the fact, the whole idea when we first passed this was this will probably never happen. Now we already know that it happened. And the company's market cap has now fallen below that 650 billion threshold as well. So it's a tough one, but I could still see it passing. Ultimately, this vote is not going to be decided by people on Reddit or people on X. It's going to be decided by the shareholders of Tesla. And the largest shareholders of Tesla have benefited a lot from Musk's leadership. They tend to believe in the company. They tend to believe in what they're doing. We're talking about guys like Larry Ellison, right? Larry Ellison made over $1 billion in his Tesla investment in 2018. Whatever shares he has, I'm sure he'll be voting them in Musk's favor. Similarly, we saw a petition from, tens of millions of shareholders represented here on X. There's a lot of people who hold shares. I think Ron Barron will probably vote for him. So the key will really be, how do the institutions feel? If they can get them on board, and I'm sure Martin Viech has been having conversations with them, that's going to be critical. There is going to be some retail anger, but the question is, what is the alignment of that sort of frustration with Elon and that anger, however legitimate the concerns are, with the people who actually own the shares, who are going to be deciding the votes? And I would just say, as a personal opinion, look, we may have a bunch of frustrations about this guy and what he's done since then, buying X. But the deal was, you grow Tesla, you get these options to purchase Tesla shares at today's prices. That was the deal. Any sort of frustrations we have with him since then, I feel like that's a little bit outside the scope of the deal. We gave him this, we should reaffirm it. Otherwise, it's going to create a situation where he feels like the shareholders are not willing to compensate him. And I think his focus is going to shift elsewhere. He already has, ample opportunity to do that.
Okay. Fred, what do you think about the specific point that Omar raised, which is this vote is on for service that's already delivered, that it was based on a compensation plan that was approved by shareholders, that Elon delivered on his side, and we should award him for the service already delivered. And it doesn't, what happened after that is irrelevant to this vote specifically.
Well, I think that you can definitely approach a situation like that, and it probably would be the best way to do it. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think people cannot just forget about the recent years. But I would add just one more thing to be a little bit more fair, because it's not just that. It's not just like he did it, so we should pay him. I know that, like, for someone like Omar, who's been following Tesla very closely, like he probably was aware of a lot of the things that the judge pointed out in her decision. But the thing here is, like, the judge cannot assume that people knew that. The judge had to look at what Tesla communicated to shareholders, and then what was actually happening behind the scenes, and there was some discrepancies there. So I know that plenty of shareholders probably in this room are like already were aware of most of these issues, at least to a certain degree, so they're not too much affected by it. But you have to look at it from a shareholder that just didn't know about that and just went from Tesla's proxy statement. And then if they look at the judge decision now and look in more details, and there's no doubt that the judge decision includes a lot more details about how the plan came about, you can, like, try to approach it just like Omar talked about, just like, all right, well, let's reapprove it because he actually made it happen, he did the work and all that. Instead, you have to kind of look at, all right, but how the plan came about, why did they go with 6% ownership in the company for $60 billion, like what was the actual logic behind it. And when you learn about it like that, like it was probably not just probably, it looked like it was completely proposed by Elon and his team, and then approved by people that, you can argue were not really independent board members.
Okay.
Yeah, people need to do their decision and the new decision based on that, and that could change the decision. I mean, I don't know, like, how much percentage, but if it was 72% of the vote last time, maybe if it was the exact same shareholders, which obviously it's not going to be, maybe
Right.
that takes off like a 10% of those people. We don't know.
Right. Machine.
Fred, a real important question here. Did Leo offer you a ride in his time machine?
Time engine. I don't think it's quite a time machine, but no.
Yeah, that's very important consideration. Pennington, go ahead.
Yeah, Fred said something about Elon not really wanting to run a public company, but I sort of view it a little differently. I think he kind of needs to run a public company because it's his primary form of liquidity. Without being able to sell Tesla, he wasn't able to buy Twitter. But I do think that there are other things in terms of just the rules that he does not adhere to. And to Fred's point, also, as relates to this comp package and not disclosing things, or the SEC filings after he first started to purchase Twitter shares, when these things are not done by the book, when it's just Elon saying, I'm going to do it whatever I want to do, and if people aren't happy with that, so be it, but I'll have my fans. That's what kind of ruffles people's feathers. It's Leo could say, I'm not going to vote for him. I tried to reach out to him. He didn't respond back to me. Whereas another CEO would respond back to Leo. So I think there's two different elements to it. And they're both in play as relates to this vote and everything else.
Okay, great. Machine.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on something Omar said, which is the timing. And the timing couldn't be worse for Elon. And I really agree. Unfortunately, the chain of events here with the share price decline, obviously, with deliveries flat or negative, coming into this earnings report where, the response to the earnings call, depending on how he acts and, how positive he is and how much they're talking about robotaxis, might induce another bit of sell-off, pushing the share price down further coming into this shareholders meeting. Now you have people even more upset. The lower the share price, the more likely people are going to vote against this. And then if they vote against this, it's going to plummet the share price even further. So it's kind of this weird downward spiral that hopefully is stopped. And I think the best case for that is him being very clear and bullish and not like whining about interest rates or economy on the call. So we'll see.
Okay, great. Just one thing I see sometimes in the replies and YouTube live chats, commentary that's really personal and against Fred or Omar. From now on, when I see those things, I'm going to remove people. If it's ad hominem and no point behind it, I'm going to remove people from the space, and you can listen to the recording later. Okay? All right. We're going to leave it there. Fred, thank you very much for joining. It's a pleasure. Always welcome back. All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I gotta go. Have a good one, guys.
All right. Take care. Machine, go ahead.
No, I just want to say for all these losers who don't come up here and want to make comments against anyone, keep your insults to me. I can take it. All right. I'm going to protect all these other gentle souls. You can try to insult me about my face, which someone did. They try to say I should get some Botox. So, I mean, these sort of absurd comments, fine. I'll take it. Okay. I actually find it entertaining.
Yeah. I'm also very entertained when people personally insult Machine. So keep that going. All right. Well, what do you guys want to talk about now?
Dude, do you see Nvidia today?
I know. It's crazy. Did you sell your shares?
No, I'm going down with the ship, just like with
Okay.
Tesla.
What do you think is going to happen from here? Do you think Nvidia stock will recover? There's some different views on that.
To be honest, I haven't even looked into what's driving today's price action yet, so I'll have to do a little more. But I did find some
It's
of Zuck's comments interesting.
it's probably Elon's tweets.
It could be. But Zuck made some interesting comments on his podcast appearance lately where he talked about sort of the fundamental limitations of energy, right? Like these data center buildouts, they require massive amounts of energy, and there's sort of limits to the physical infrastructure there in terms of how much power can be delivered to a single site. And these data centers really need to be co-located so that you can have fast access to the data they're training on. So it's really kind of interesting. And then you also look at some of these latest models from Meta, and it's amazing how they're actually making the smaller size models perform extremely well, like better than the old big models used to perform. So, if you can potentially slash inference cost and training cost and have these, more powerful models that you can run with a fraction of the inference cost, then that probably is not great for their growth outlook either. But I doubt these sort of technical things are really driving the market, or maybe they are. I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like we talked about that for months, exactly what you just said in here. And Meta predicted it as well. We had some in-depth discussions. And it's exactly how it's playing out. Machine?
Yeah, that you could just say you don't know, Omar, and you could have ended your comment there. The reason is because SMCI, I guess normally, I don't know what this quote pre-releases.
Dude, that's just the bullshit. That's the bullshit
That's not
part.
bullshit.
You know that.
You let me.
You
Don't
know
interrupt
that.
me. Don't interrupt me when I'm making a salient
Well,
point.
I saw the headline, but that's
you
the
kidding me?
trader's view. What really
No.
matters is what Omar is saying.
Oh my God. You're asking what was the price movement today? Go look at SMCI down 20%. Not just they're down 20%. Go look at the trend
I know.
over the wait.
I know.
You stop interrupting.
Okay, go ahead.
My
Okay,
God.
fine.
You had too much coffee today. Look at the trend over the course of the day. Go look at Nvidia. Go look at AMD. They're all down heavily on this risk that SMCI is signaling, basically. Oh, maybe this is the beginning of the end, right, of the growth phase, and the risk off, right? And AMD.
Do you think
down.
that's what Ashok meant?
Well, I don't know, what did Ashok say. Oh,
he said beginning of the end.
So I think simply that reaction is due to SMCI, but the overall reaction to all of those companies might be, what Omar was mentioning, could be a bigger cause in the background, but it's because of SMCI.
Someone said ASML's reported margins that were a little bit down as well. But, it's interesting sort of how the LLM space has evolved. It's, LLMs are a commodity now. It's kind of crazy. There's several of them that are very good. Even Elon's little Grok model is putting up pretty impressive performance benchmarks. It has vision. Meta just released Llama 3, completely open source model. You can download it, you can use the weights. It's licensed for commercial use, so I can build a business on it without paying Meta anything. I mean, at some point, there's sort of diminishing returns for VCs pursuing these sort of AI businesses because of this sort of commoditization, I think, right? I mean, how do you differentiate yourself when Facebook's giving out a world-class model for free?
Meta is coming up. Clay, did you have something to say on this?
Not on this. I had a follow-up question from earlier.
Okay, we're going to focus on this for a second. Meta, go ahead.
Sorry, I can't stay very long. I just want to make a request. Can we call the other Meta Facebook? I feel like I had the name first, and it's really weird. I have like an association with the name, and every time you guys talk about it, it like weirds me out.
Or you don't want to be associated with the company that has the best performing, I guess, no? As Omar said.
Asterix.
Yeah. What's the asterisk?
As we talked about yesterday, they don't have the best performing model. They have a focused model. So what they're showing, and this is what Machine was bringing up yesterday as well, is the way these model compressions are occurring is by saying we're not going to do certain things. We're going to continue to do the things that we're focused on, and we do better on those with smaller models. So it's kind of cheating. It's like saying, well, the big model does complex physics, and the small model is a good assistant. Okay, well, most assistants don't need to understand complex physics.
Got it. Thank you very much. Thanks for hopping by. I know you're a busy day today.
That was very rude to secretaries.
Assistants and secretaries are the same thing to you, Machine?
Maybe.
So I got AI driver coming over here in a little bit. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, so it'll be fun to do like maybe a comparison compared to before. But, yesterday I had a perfect day with FSD. I did 5 drives over about 25 miles, which is a lot in San Francisco, a few hours of driving. And every single drive was 0 intervention. It was pretty cool. Like this latest build doesn't make mistakes. It's getting pretty rare.
Yeah, I'm going to test 12. Man, are we on 12.3.4, right? I'm going to test that, I think, tomorrow or Monday.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
All right. When AI driver comes in, maybe Wes can join us and ask some questions. He had a post as well that showed, one intersection that he was having 10 out of 10 problems with is now 10 out of 10 accurate. So I'm going to pin that up here, actually. He's in the listening mode, maybe busy with something. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Did you want to talk about my critical disengagement yesterday?
Yeah, go ahead.
I live out in the country. I don't get into the city very much. My boss wanted to go to Montreal for a flight. I offered to drive him because he's been kind of negative towards EVs, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to show him the full self-driving. It did an awesome job. I drove from like Kingston to Montreal. It's about a 3-hour drive, mostly highways. But in Montreal, I'm not from Montreal. The streets are very confusing to me. Plus, the street signs are in French. Full self-driving did an awesome job. On the way back, I got all the way back to Kingston, and I dropped him off, and I'm on my way home. I come up to like a 4-way stop, I believe. At least there was a stop facing me, and the car was just not slowing down at all. And I was kind of half asleep. I've been driving for 12 hours. It was like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I had to just come on the binders. I slid through the white line. Nobody was there, no other cars, no pedestrians. It was dark, it was wet. I was going, holy shit, like sorry, excuse my language. I got a little complacent, right? I've been driving all day and I've been doing great. So, and then after that, I did another weird thing. And somebody said today, I don't know if it was Wes, that maybe after you do a change in your navigation, it kind of got screwed because I just had redone my navigation to go home from his place, like a block away. But anyway, 99.9% wonderful. And then that just scary moment right at the end.
Okay, Machine, what do you think about that critical disengagement? Meta, what do you think about that critical disengagement? All right. So I think what happened, Brian, is the preamble to the critical disengagement made people kind of check out of the conversation. And then they started replying to questions in the reply. They completely lost what you said. I don't think anyone listened to that critical disengagement part. So can you just like say that one sentence and then we'll talk about it?
Okay. I dropped off my passenger. I re-navigated to my home. And about a block later, it wanted to drive through a stop sign. And I had to brake, emergency brake, and it was wet roads. And I slid past the white line a couple of feet.
Gotcha. Wes, what do you think about that? Where, I guess the brake didn't recognize the stop sign and Brian had to slam the brakes and pass the white lane by a little bit.
Yeah, any part I can reliably reproduce weird behavior when I initiate a map change right before a maneuver is planned from the nav route. So I'm seeing erratic behavior when that happens. So I'm kind of discounting that at this point because I think the team must know about this, or hopefully they'll hear about it somehow from disengagements and whatnot. So yeah, I'm seeing unstable behavior and I can reproduce it. So that's what I think it is.
Okay. And what do you think exactly is causing that issue? What could be causing that issue?
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems like there's some weighting. I don't know if Meta's still here. Yeah. Or Machine. It seems like there's some weighting that the model has to the map metadata. So the nav route is like, okay, you're going to make a left at the stop sign. And some of that is communicated to the model. And the model takes that into account. Okay, I got a right turn coming up, so I should expect this intersection. Maybe it tells it's a four-way stop. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it tells it that there is a stop line at some distance from, longitudinally from the stop sign itself. Maybe there's other metadata. I'm not sure, but there is something that's being communicated that it's using for confidence. I've called this for a number of years. I've called this to be a trusted source. And the closer you get to the trusted source, the more you can actually trust it. So when you get this data from the map, you don't trust it as much until you get closer, and the closer you get, the more you trust it. So anyway, that's what I think it's doing, because that's the example that I posted on Twitter that I think is pretty conclusive, albeit, only one instance, but I'm hearing other people say that these are the majority of their disengagements are when they change the nav route or when the system FSD doesn't follow the nav route for some reason.
Interesting. Brian, does that explain? Do you have any questions for Wes?
Yeah, it does kind of, because the rest of my day, like 12 hours of driving on FSD, was really reliable because they were long navigations, a long distance, I think, if that makes sense. And just after that critical disengagement, the next block, it came up to an intersection where I wanted to go straight through. The navigation was going straight through. It got into the left turn lane without the signal on. And it was later at night. There was a car pulled up beside me. He was going to go straight through. I had to disengage because it looked like the car was going to want to go straight ahead. And I was in the left-hand turn lane with an advanced left turn signal came on. And it was just wonky. I'd never seen, that was the worst it'd been all day. And it was in two, one after the other, right close.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my example where I started to accurately reproduce this is a single lane roundabout where I was trying to get it to do the roundabout with traffic. So I kept going through it and I was doing a 360. In other words, just basically a U-turn. And I changed the nav route as it was about like 200 feet from it. And as it went through the roundabout, all of a sudden the steering wheel was jerking all around and it went over the middle part, the raised edge of the roundabout. I'm like, oh, that's weird. So I went through it again and tried to, change the nav route right at that point, and I reproduced it. I did it a third time. I reproduced it, so I kind of said, well, that's what it's at. 3 times was good enough for me. So I can tell that there's some dependence there. I don't know exactly what it is, but I can accurately reproduce that.
Meta?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. This is coming up in the comments a lot. What Wes is saying is if your vehicle is encountering a regular instance, it's possible when you connect to Wi-Fi that data goes up to the cloud, and then they use that to update map hints going forward. And a few people are getting confused when they say, I go by the same intersection regularly and it doesn't get better. They may not be connecting to the cloud. They may be in a region where Tesla's not trying this experiment out. Like let's say California, Washington, they might be trying to say, okay, these areas are doing really well. So the next stage of disengagements that they're tackling in that area happen to be of this type. And then the last bit is just because it's not happening everywhere doesn't mean that the capacity to do it does not exist. That'd be a logical fallacy. So I think what Wes has shown is concrete evidence, in my opinion, because assuming all the facts are right, if you have a regular issue occurring and you have no update and you have a data download and then it's regularly performing correctly, the only thing that changed is the cloud.
All right, great. Thank you. Wes Machine asked me to tell you that his comment about semi-retirement was a complete joke, and he apologizes and says,
no worries.
Please,
I asked him.
He said,
I asked him in DM.
he said, please forgive me.
Yeah, no worries.
Is that why he
I
was
consider.
Is that why
my
Machine's
friends
been putting?
joke around with me too, so no worries.
Wes, is that why Machine's been putting a lot of mascara on to cover all his crying? I saw there was a lot more mascara in his eye today.
Oh God.
Omar?
So a little off topic, but I guess Supermicro plummeted 20% after announcing an earnings release date without providing preliminary results, which they typically do. So I guess people are seeing this as sort of a bad sign for demand in this sector. And then also, I think it's kind of funny how much more mild the sort of interventions have gotten. It used to be like, oh, it tried to drive into a monorail track or drive off a cliff and I had to disengage. Now it's like, wasn't showing its signal, didn't see a stop sign. I mean, it's gotten pretty good at handling stop signs. One question I'd have is, was there anything unusual about this stop sign that made it not detect it? Was it at a strange angle? Was it the lighting? Why did the vision system not pick it up? Was there anything challenging about it, or was it just an ordinary stop sign?
Brian?
Yeah, it was night, like it was 10 o'clock. It had just been raining. The roads are slick. That's the only thing about it. There was no street lights. It was an unlit area. But the stop sign was quite visible. You know what? I'd be willing to go back and take a picture of that stop sign just to.
Yeah. I've
show.
noticed that there is more of a performance degradation in rain and night in 12 compared to 11. 11, it got to the point where there was almost no noticeable degradation of performance at all. So I'm certain that with more training, they can get the low light, nighttime, and inclement weather performance to a point where it's on par with the performance in a well-lit sunny day.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Brian, to take a picture of the stop sign and post it. The other thing is, so Wes is on a mission to find safety critical disengagements, and you can help him out if you see something on your routes. If you see something on your routes, and you have a safety critical disengagement, if you can take a video of it or picture of it, etc. If you can't, like if taking a video on your phone is going to endanger your safety, don't do that, right? So just take a screenshot of Apple Maps or Google Maps or whatever map service you use of that intersection and post it with your you know tweet to Wes. Okay, so Wes is on the board. His account is at Tesla Trip. Just describe what happened. If you have a video or picture, great. If you don't, just post a screenshot of the map of that intersection. All right, Wes?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, so I want to talk about my experience on 12.3.4. And my experience is in the city of Boston. I drive around. I live in downtown, so I drive like really in the downtown area. And unfortunately, not to be a Debbie Downer, but my experience, while like head and shoulders above the 11, is like nowhere close to what Omar and Wes are getting. And I'm like jealous. I'm very jealous. And I'll tell you about some of my disengagements. I write them all down, but like a lot of them seem to be about lane choice, and then how it proceeds once it chooses the wrong lane. A lot of the time, it will try to continue on the route that it needs to go on. Like it will try to go into the lane it should have been mid turn, or for instance, one time it got into a left turn lane, and it went straight. And I could send all the coordinates. So is the theory that this is happening because of like map data? Is that why we're talking about
Okay.
Wes?
Let's ask Wes.
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying first, I believe you. You're not having a great experience. The second one would be for your case, I would love to know, because there's no video and I can't see what's on the nav. When you're going to make your next turn, when you get close to it, glance at the map data and see if it shows lane level guidance for that maneuver. In other words, it'll show on the screen like this turn is in 300 yards or whatever, and it shows that there's two lanes, one goes straight, one goes right, it's dedicated right, things like that. You know, the little arrows on the nav screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, if you had an image, it would be perfect. But I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
But
on the
also,
highway, you get these all the time because for highway data, the map has lane level guidance. When you're exiting the freeway, it'll show like which lane does and which lanes go straight. But that isn't available yet for every city or every non-class 4, class 5 road. In other words, surface streets. So if you don't have that, then you might not be getting as good metadata or these hints that inform the vision system of what to do. So that's why you might see the vehicle not being able to choose a lane more confidently and earlier, like we are in different areas.
It's also about pseudo lanes, like when you're in a one lane road, right? And you want to make a left, and you have to wait, and then you have to kind of creep to the left to allow others to turn right or go straight around you. And the car doesn't seem to do things like that. So I routinely have to disengage to get it to move over. Otherwise, I'm going to get honked at like crazy.
Omar.
Yeah, I think Boston's kind of a challenging city. Obviously, Boston and many of the roads in Boston were set up before cars and really designed for horses. So there's some peculiarities to that city and cities like it in Europe that require some extra training, I think. So it's really just that the model just kind of sucks right now. And I think what's going to happen is they're going to release a new version of the model in the future, and it's just going to work. all of a sudden it'll be able to handle all of these issues without a problem. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts if you drove a little bit out of the city into maybe a more suburban area, how it works there compared to within Boston.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point. In the suburban areas, it works brilliantly. There was a stop sign that I had trouble with every time in the suburbs, that because it's facing kind of towards the road that it's not meant to give guidance to. It's facing towards yeah. So it looks like it's a
Okay.
stop sign for this road, and it
Wes?
got better.
Yeah, I'd second that. And if you have something that you can post that's recurring, like you can reliably reproduce it, I'd love to see it. So maybe a little background, and Omar is totally right. Those roads were designed for horse and buggy. And I have a tiny story. We had a professor come in and inform us, a controls professor from, I think he was from Cambridge. And he's like, yeah, autonomous cars are never going to work. And here's why. Here's all of these examples in Boston that it'll never be able to do. And so I'd be interested to see some of these areas if you know Boston well. Just one would be even enough. And if you could give me a pin on Google Maps, something that would be helpful too. It'd be nice to know that, because then we could say, look, map lane level map data would help in that scenario.
Yeah, let's. I'll definitely do that.
Very cool. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If you're having safety critical disengagements on your routes, please come up and explain it to Wes. Or you can just post it to him with a picture, video, or just a map screenshot. All right, let's see what else we have on the menu today. So I tried to create a reminder space in the morning, and then to it, I reply with some of the things that I see. Oh, machines coming up. Oh, Ridge is coming up. And Wes stands up. Okay, let's go. Wes.
I'm curious. I know a lot of people are listening that maybe don't have FSD 3.4. I'm kind of wondering what percentage of the listeners have it. That would be very interesting to me. My buddy, I went for a walk with him yesterday, and he's had a Model Y for 4 months now, and he still hasn't gotten the invite for his free month.
Interesting. Machine.
Once these drivers go around downtown Boston collecting all the capabilities of V12 to handle Boston streets, and Wes is going to collate a YouTube video of all of them. Then he's going to fly to Boston. He's going to find this professor inside a cafe. He's going to stand outside the cafe window, slam the phone against the window, and say, "How do you like them apples?" If you get that reference.
How do you like
if you don't
them
get
now?
that reference, yeah. No, it's all right, Reggie.
Yeah, so definitely have one for you, Wes. But my experience with being on FSD now, 3.4, it's been amazing. I do not literally touch the pedals until I get back, either to the destination or back home. So it's been very, very good. However, one thing I do have trying to figure out what the situation is. So when I leave my kids' school, it's a 10 miles per hour in the parking lot, if you will. When I exit, the road is 40 miles per hour. However, FSD still will make the turn up and take a left at 10 miles per hour, and the speed limit, it still shows max 10 miles per hour until the 40 mile per hour sign 40 or 50 yards on the road. So I'm wondering what is that all about? It happens every single time. 3.3 or 3.4. It's the same behavior.
Wes.
Yeah, to just be blunt, I think a lot of the speed limit data now, if you're doing auto, is coming from learned speeds. I don't know if anybody realizes this, but on Google Maps, when you use nav data, it calculates your ETA based on traffic flow speeds, not speed limits. And I think that Tesla is using a similar concept.
Wes, I pinned at the top. Boy who cried FSD as a critical disengagement. He posted with a map, and so you can see that at the top. He says, I had a critical disengagement here. First pick was I was at a red light where the orange line is. Green was the navigation path. It was a protected left turn with no other vehicles blocking the car's ability to change lanes. It headed straight towards the curb between the two roads marked in red. Second pick follows the same color code.
I'm not sure I understand this diagram.
He's basically saying that the car just went to the curb, right, with the red arrow. I mean, he's welcome to request to speak so we can ask him some questions about it too.
Yeah, I'd love to know more data because this is sounding like the map reroute issue.
Okay. If he wants to come up and talk about it, he's welcome to do so. But this is the kind of format we're looking for. Thank you. All right. Omar, what do you think about this Shanghai, Giga Shanghai cutting production 30% rumor?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how seriously to take it, but I'll be keeping an eye on the weekly data that comes out of China to get a sense of what's going on there. So I think that provides a pretty accurate picture.
All right. We have the person with the disengagement up on the board now. That is quick. Thank you very much. So I pinned that stuff again. Wes, any questions, or Omar, any questions for Boy Who Cried FSD?
Yeah, if there was a map reroute, or if the map, maybe I could say nav route, was not followed, that's kind of the key, because that's where it gets unstable. If it's following the nav route, then I'd be more interested in that, because then that would be unique.
Yeah, so Yaman actually described the situation perfectly. There was no nav route adjustment. And yeah, so at the stoplight, I was turning left and anticipating it would get over and go down that road that I marked kind of in the second picture. You can see it kind of creeps up and goes down a hill. And it was very clear that it was not getting over in time and basically was barreling straight towards that curb at the fork in the road. So I had to disengage.
Gotcha. Is it reproducible?
I mean, I could definitely go give it a whirl later today and see how it goes.
Yeah, if it is, and that's cool, that would be nice to know. And then I think the other thing is, if you do see it do that, if there's erratic behavior in the steering wheel, like it's jerking around, that would be indicative of it kind of reproducing this map issue. And then if it's also trying to go off nav route, that would be interesting. And then maybe the last thing would be, maybe you're also not getting lane level guidance, where it's showing you on the nav instructions for your next turn what lanes are appropriate for that maneuver. So that would also be interesting.
Okay, yeah, I will try to recreate it later, and I'll tag you on the updated tweet.
Cool, thank you. And I hope this isn't like super boring for people to be talking about this.
No, it's all good.
Well, yeah, Ethan Dovray also posted a critical disengagement. West tagged you on it. And he says, this was my critical disengagement as FSD was merging onto the highway. I'll put this up here so West can review it. It started to creep in the merge lane. There were cars coming down the highway in the right lane. It kept creeping, and I started to get pinned between the car on the highway and the guardrail. I allowed to keep going, but had to hit the brakes because it got too close to another car coming. If the car had slowed down a bit, FSD may have been able to sneak in, but it wasn't being aggressive enough in this situation. Other than that, I'm experiencing great drives, he says. And here's a picture of the merge as well. Yeah, it's more of an issue where it just needs to be more aggressive as it gains more confidence. Wes,
Yeah, the
anything to
steam.
say?
Yeah. The handoff between city streets and highways going from V12 to V11, that's what's happening in the code, it seems. This also seems to be potentially an issue with lane level guidance, because highways, like I said, are always have lane level guidance, and urban sometimes does, sometimes doesn't. So when you transition from a city street to a highway, try to make note if there's wasn't lane level guidance for your previous turn, and then for the turn onto the highway, if there is, because that's the seam.
Ethan?
Thanks for having me up. A quick question, Wes. What do you mean by lane level guidance? What am I looking for there?
Yeah, gotcha. If you're a Google Map user, when you or if you can do it now on your phone, go into Google Maps, put in a destination, and you can swipe up from the bottom, and you'll see the turn-by-turn directions, and it should have lane level guidance in there. If it doesn't, the next time you go for a drive, just use Google Maps, and it'll show you lane level guidance. Where when you make this maneuver, left, right, whatever, go straight, it should show an intersection, where it's meaningful, which lanes go in the direction that you need to go through that intersection. So like a left turn, it'll show you the dedicated lane on the left, and you have to use that lane because no other lane is allowed to turn left, things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll take a look at it. I'll have to dig into the app or Google Maps and take a look. But yeah, for this one, it was like, so I've done this specific on ramp pretty much, and I'll be doing it later today, so I'll test it again.
Cool.
But it's a very short on ramp, and so I've had it where even in heavy traffic, it'll actually kind of pace itself and slot itself
Yeah.
in with the other
Yeah.
cars, and that's fantastic. But this time, the on ramp was actually not backed up too much, but the highway was still, it wasn't busy like rush hour, but there was still fast moving traffic. So I
Yeah.
noticed when there's fast moving traffic, it has a more difficult time. And I like that it creeped, but there were two cars coming in succession. So it allowed the first one to go. And then it kind of just kept the same speed. I thought it was going to step on it because in the past it has kind of accelerated pretty fast and aggressively,
Yeah.
which I was appreciative of.
Yeah, and the thing about this seam, this handoff, is that it's less confident, and so it's not going to accelerate as fast when it's less confident, and then that obviously leads to more criticality.
So a follow-up question then for you, Wes, is in these situations when it either doesn't have great lane level guidance, or it's trying to figure out that handoff, uh, how is it factoring in kind of the obstacles or trying to avoid cars? Because for my instance, it should be recognizing the car coming from behind, right? And then if it got pretty close, probably within a couple feet of that car, probably laterally. So but I didn't see any kind of like
Yeah.
red, notification come up.
Well, yeah, that's notable, and that's a bummer. Every time the system is running inference and it's doing its standard stack of first identifying, and then classifying, and then tracking objects, it has to have or sorry, a better way to say it is that everything that it does has a level of confidence. And so when it's doing these things, it may just have less confidence in its ability to do one or all of those things, or some of them. And that just leads to it not doing as best as it could for the final plan and the final controls that it actually executes on the vehicle to make it dynamically move through space. So that's basically what's happening. So when it gets these good map hints, it's able to execute these things with more confidence. And when it doesn't, or potentially this data might be coming in corrupt, is a possibility during this handoff, and then it just has to go like straight vision only, and it's not as good as it would be if it had these hints. Now, remember, this is all speculation, and I think this is what's happening because I'm able to reproduce it, so I feel like it's a pretty good speculation, pretty good guess. But at the end of the day, it's just, trying to gather data points. And then I'll end with this, is that I'm pretty sure the team already knows these things. And, this is for us to, just kind of get more insight into the system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's very
And
helpful.
honestly, I think the team probably knows about these things even before it goes out. And now, Wes, to answer your question about what portion of the audience has the 12.3.4, Michael pinned at the top a chart that shows the overall distribution, with more than 55% not having any sort of V12 right now. And my understanding is that this space is very diverse and probably representative of that group as well. So I would guess it's the same distribution for the people who
cool.
have FSD.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's good. I'm glad that a fair amount have it, so that this information is hopefully useful.
Yeah, Omar. And by the way, Wes, there are replies that are saying this is a great FSD space. Thank you very much. And obviously, you're answering all the questions right now. So a lot of that credit goes to you and Omar and
Cool.
Meta and everybody else who's coming up and asking questions. Thank you. Omar?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the map hints are kind of beside the point. Even if there are no map hints or the map hints are incorrect, I mean, the map hints are nice when you have them. But even if the map hints are incorrect, it needs to be able to just look at the highway and say, okay, there's two lanes merging into each other. And you just look at Ethan's picture. I mean, this looks like a little bit of a sticky merge situation. You got these two lanes at high speed just ending up on top of each other. So it's easy to see why the old highway stack is having trouble with this, or how it could have situations where it could fail to merge in a proper way. But I'm pretty sure that the end-to-end stack could probably do this like perfectly, because you see the end-to-end stack on the city streets. I mean, the old stack on the highway is really starting to show its age, because you just have you kind of feel that frustration that you just don't feel on the city streets. And there's certain highways which are kind of like on the border between highway and city street. So they're kind of not marked as a highway on the map. Like, for example, Highway 17 down to Santa Cruz and things like that, where you can actually see how the end-to-end stack performs on the highway. Or actually, like, even merging onto the highway, it kind of sometimes stays on the end-to-end stack for a little bit, and you can see how it merges onto the highway. And it's just beautiful. Like, I think clearly we're going to get an update, 12 point something, that brings the end-to-end stack to the highway, and we're just going to see, I think, this huge leap in performance. But right now you have that kind of handoff event that happens on the on-ramp, which I think probably contributed to the situation. And the old stack just isn't as good at tricky situations like this as the new stack is.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. This space is being sponsored by my patrons. If you'd like to join as a patron, you may do so at the top of your screens. Without my patrons, this space, I guess somebody doesn't familiar with the rules here. You have to stay on mute until called upon. Without the patrons, this space does not exist. Thank you, Tony Conroy, for joining Patreon. Clay, go ahead.
So this is back on the vote topic. So I understand the background and the history. In 2018, there was obviously the shareholder vote, which was approved to give Elon the compensation package, which he achieved all the metrics. And then obviously there was the one shareholder that had the lawsuit, and it went to court. And so I'm still not fully understanding why this shareholder vote is happening, given it already happened. And I looked on the support TeslaValue.com website, and it literally says reinstate what you've already voted for. So I'm just trying to understand if this is a voluntary vote that the Tesla board and Elon is choosing to do, and if so, it really feels like a big risk. And it almost feels like one of Elon's Twitter polls where, you know, he was asking if he should buy Twitter or um, if he should sell shares or different things. Like, I'm wondering if I'm just trying to understand why this vote's happening.
Omar.
Well, there's this lawsuit going on right now, and potentially they could have to pay billions of dollars to the law firm if it's decided in their favor. But if we're able to appeal and we're able to say that the shareholders reaffirm that they want to grant him this package, then it could potentially save shareholders billions of dollars in legal fees that we would have to pay to this firm. I think we can all agree that we'd rather be compensating our executive rather than some law firm if we're giving billions of dollars of stock to somebody. So, yeah, I think we should just reaffirm the plan. The outcome of not approving it would be disastrous, I think. And anybody, I think, trying to sort of drum up resistance, plant FUD, and say, oh, listen to the court. They want you to vote no. I think is really just trying to harm Tesla.
Right. So can I just follow up on that? So if we are saying that this is a voluntary vote that Tesla is doing to make its position stronger in a court, but really as we're going through the numbers, it's really a neck and neck vote between yes and no based on what was said yesterday in the spaces. Like, isn't this a giant risk that the company and Elon is voluntarily taking on?
No, because they already know that it's going to pass. They already asked
Okay.
everybody.
Ken.
Just want to clarify one thing. This voluntary vote will have no effect on the lawsuit. And the best way to think about it is if you're in a car and you're going across a railroad track and you get hit by a train and you get injured and you sue the city, and then the city puts up a crossing gate, the city can't put up the crossing gate and then go back and annul your lawsuit because it took corrective action. So
Great.
it will have
Meta is proud of your analogy or metaphor, Ken. He is in the listening mode right now, and he's jumping up and down because he's so happy you used a metaphor that makes a lot of sense and simple, and it allows people to understand you better. He's taking notes.
Look, if the shareholders approve this, it absolutely sends a strong message. The voice of the shareholders is the most important thing. You cannot have courts overriding the clear vote of shareholders. So I think it matters a great deal. It's like someone, stole your car, but it was you, right? Well, that wasn't a very good metaphor.
We're gonna have metaphor competitions. Reggie.
Uh, yeah, I want to change the topic. So you guys want to continue with this one? I'm okay.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a little bit because I think that we talked for an hour and a half about FSD. The first half hour was about the comp plan, and now we talked for an hour about FSD. And now let's kind of switch it a little bit for another half hour, and then we're going to call it a day. Ashay, go ahead.
For those who might have more knowledge about this, is there a requirement on Elon to abstain from voting on this, or is he just doing it out of the optics of it and obviously all the ethical and whatever?
Ken.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? It kind of faded on me.
No, I was
Does he have
asking
to abstain? Does he have to abstain or doing it because, for ethical purposes?
He is abstaining, and according to the proxy, it's in there that he has to abstain, and that's more for ethical purposes than really anything else. Which makes sense. I mean, you can't. Should he vote on his own compensation package? He's got a big conflict of interest, and he holds a large amount of shares, so it's a huge conflict of interest if he votes.
Here you go, Shay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, but also it kind of adds to other questions, which is then is there a set of decisions that he's just not allowed to vote on because he may personally benefit from those, but they might be at larger scale better for the company.
He can vote, and he should vote on a lot of things, and I do believe he can vote for whether or not they reincorporate in Texas. He's not limited to abstaining on that issue. So no, he can vote on other issues.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, I have to drop off for a second and then come back, but everything good? You got your answer, Shay?
Yeah. I mean, I wish he votes, but that's just me.
I mean, I think Omar seems confident that it's going to pass. And I think it's going to be closer than people think, but I think it's going to pass too.
I mean,
Grant? Yeah, Omar, go ahead.
I mean, I just have, know the Tesla IR team. They have very close relationships with some of the largest institutional and retail shareholders. I'd be very surprised if they didn't conduct at least some informal polling of, say, the top 10 shareholders to see how they felt about this. They said that this was initiated partly because some of those top 10 shareholders reached out to them and told them that this is something that they would support.
Grant.
Yeah, I think Machine had said this earlier, but I really do think that the price of the stock going into the vote matters. Like, I think that is going to be important to institutional investors. I think if it's at $100 a share, there's less downside to voting against it. The other thing I'll say is I think I saw something about Ron Barron being really disappointed in the repeal of the Model 2 plan. Like, that's something that I think I will predict comes back. I think that we'll be talking more about the Model 2 and the small vehicle that is now in plan, because I think that's likely to be the sort of thing that, if it is close, Elon can give on to get support from larger shareholders from. So I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up coming back so that he can get this comp package over the line.
Dude, you're the amount of speculation that you bring to the space is really insane. That's an absurd thing to say. Sorry.
I mean, I don't think so, to be honest. I think this is how these sorts of things work. I'm, around boards and spend time understanding some of the dynamics. And that is like the reason that Ron Barron is in the news saying, "Oh, I'm really disappointed in that," is because he is creating a negotiating chip for himself.
Where's the link? Show me the source that Ron Barron said he's very disappointed.
I don't know. I can Google it.
Has
anyone else heard that he's expressed disappointment? I do think that there are some larger institutional shareholders. If you look at the equity,
why don't you? I asked you for a link while Omar talks. Go ahead, Omar.
Yeah.
So I think what one of his sons said was that if they were canceling the compact, that would be material to their thesis. They have it actually in there for a good part of the growth going forward. But I don't think that there have been any changes in expectations and volumes for the next gen platform. I think that's kind of a misconception. And maybe we could talk about some of the comments they made on the last earnings call about the next gen platform and what that update's going to look like on this call. But another separate point I wanted to make is that in the recent annual shareholder meeting votes in 2023, 38% of the shareholder base voted, and in 2022, 40% of the shareholder base voted. So an important component here is going to be not just what the shareholder base feels, but also which side is more animated to turn out. If the people who are more angry at Elon are less likely to be energized about the issue and vote, or are more energized about the issue and vote, that could play a part too. Who actually comes out and votes their shares?
Grant.
Agreed with what you're saying. I think institutional investors
Hold on.
have to vote
Did you
their
find?
shares.
Did you find a link?
I think what I'd seen was from a Tesla fan account. I can share the link to this tweet, but it was the son of Ron Barron, so that's true. But
And what did the son say?
It said that the Model 2 is a quote unquote crucial piece of their thesis, and he'd be quote unquote
Okay.
very surprised.
So you misquoted the quote, and you misnamed the source, and you stated as a fact. And this is why I don't accept your request to speak when the tensions are high, because we can't have this kind of mishap when the tensions are high. Okay?
Okay, that's fair.
Stick to the facts. Mike?
I'm way late. I just wanted to point out to Grant that it was Ron Barron's son, and Elon has a great opportunity, last opportunity before the vote on the earnings call on Tuesday, to set the record straight that both the Robotaxi and the Model 2 are on the same platform. They're interchangeable. Great opportunity for Elon to set the record straight in a couple days.
Kauai.
Will we, this is for aloha, all you guys. This is for Yaman and Omar. Are they or aren't they going to do the Model 2 or the new $25,000 vehicle?
Omar, why don't you go first?
Yes, they are doing it. And they're actually quite far along, contrary to what people think. I'd like to actually just play the quote from the last earnings call in January about it in the space if I could. It's about a minute long.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Here we go.
We can't hear it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It like came on for a second and then disappeared.
All right, let me try something else. Hold on. I'll play it off my laptop.
If you have not driven a Model 3 in a long time, you should really try the new one. So steady improvements. And we're very far along on a next generation low cost vehicle. This is an earnings call, not a product announcement. So there'll no doubt be many questions that try to ask us about new products coming, but we reserve product announcements for product announcements, not earnings calls. So, but we're very excited about this, and this is really going to be profound, not just in its design of the vehicle itself, but in the design of the manufacturing system. This is a revolutionary manufacturing system, significant, far more advanced than any other automotive manufacturing system in the world, like by a significant margin. Several years ago, I said the perhaps the most important competitive characteristic of Tesla in the future will be manufacturing technology. And you will really see that come to bear with our next gen vehicle. In the future will be manufacturing technology. And you will really see that come to bear with our next gen vehicle. The first manufacturing location for this will be at our Gigafactory and headquarters in Austin, Texas. And then we'll follow that up with other locations around the world. Probably the factory we'll build in Mexico will be second, and then we'll be looking to identify a third location, perhaps by the end of this year or early next, outside North America.
So, does this sound like something they're about to cancel? Hey, we got this revolutionary new manufacturing system. It's going to change the auto industry. We're putting it into production in Austin, then Mexico. Then later this year, we're going to announce a third location outside of North America. Never mind. That sounds like a lot of work. Let's not do that. Let's just do nothing. Like, that's what the narrative has been. I think people, have just let the negativity get to them a little bit and are believing things that make no sense. Just look at what FSD is doing. They need to build a robotaxi. GM has a robotaxi. We need a robotaxi too. We need a compact too. We need a van, but we also need a robotaxi. And he said it's not just the design of the vehicle, it's the manufacturing system. And then, Franz also made a comment a while back when the Cybertruck was launching. And they said, "What's your favorite, design or thing you've done at Tesla?" And he said, "Well, my favorite one is the one that's coming that I can't talk about yet." So, and then, when people asked him if the thing is canceled, he said, "Well, I wouldn't believe everything you read in the news." Okay, this guy knows. He's the head of design. He designs the vehicles. Okay? And yet people just believe these stories. Even if Elon comments and he goes, "Hey, they're lying. We're not canceling it." People still go, "Oh, are they canceling it?" They're not canceling it. Okay, I've talked to suppliers. I've had employees reach out to me and they said, "Hey, I work at this company and they just told us that we're going to have a startup production for the next gen platform in June 2025. And by July 2026, they're asking us to supply 10,000 units a week worth of parts to Austin." So I don't think people realize how much work they've actually been putting into this. They've been talking about this for a long time. They're not just pulling the plug on this. They think this is literally going to revolutionize manufacturing and the way they make cars. And I'm sure we're going to get an update on it on Tuesday.
Ashay, then Yoda.
First, Omar, can you confirm that that was not Adrian for Gordon Johnson's benefit? But secondly, my question is, uh, is there like a quiet period right now that he's not saying anything about the Reuters report, or leaving room for interpretation, I guess? Is that what what's your take on that? That the clarity could have just come at that point, or they want to make a big splash at the earnings call, something like that?
Omar, what do you think about that?
I don't know. He was breaking up for me. I couldn't hear what he was saying.
He's saying, is Elon being quiet because of a quiet period or some other reason? Why isn't he kind of just rebuttaling the rumors that
Because
it's
it's a
canceled?
secret. They're not telling anybody. They've taken the autopilot org chart off the computer. The employees have access to the org chart. They can see all of who reports to who are Elon's direct reports, who reports to them. Autopilot just disappeared. Who works on autopilot? Who's working on the robotaxi? We don't know. They're not on the chart. Okay? So they're working on something very special here. Like, this is a Model 3 level turning point in the company's history. And he hasn't gone crazy. like I said, the thing drove us around all day yesterday. No interventions. And this is just the beginning. So imagine where it's going to be in 2 years. You really think they can't do a vehicle without traditional controls? You can have a touch screen and, tell it where to go. You can probably talk to it, use the touch screen, whatever, but you don't need a full steering wheel and pedals. So, yeah, we're entering a very different auto market, that's for sure.
Yoda.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't join earlier. Couldn't join earlier. Had to put the baby to nap. The Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's the number of butts that Tesla needs to put into seats, and the markets for the cheaper end car market, the cheaper ride market is huge. And so, regardless of whether they do the Robotaxi first, the compact second, or together, or if Model 3, Model Y is a part of that equation, it doesn't matter. The idea is that in front of Tesla is this unaddressed TAM, this huge market. And do you really believe that they're not going to maximize that opportunity? If you do believe that, then let's see what they announce, starting with the India trip. Elon is not there to check out the Taj Mahal. He's there to do business. So we'll see next week.
One of the replies to the space, Henry Chung says about the concerns around putting or taking the controls steering wheel, etc. from out of the car. He says, "Remember the home button that we couldn't live without on the iPhone?" Kwai, you go ahead.
Omar, thanks for your answer on the Model 2 and clarifying that. I'll try to put a recording out of that to people. And my next question is for a Cybertruck owner, Omar. A certain NBA MVP from your city as a stockholder, I'm kind of concerned that he got a Cybertruck before me. And did he actually order his Cybertruck in the first day like I did?
Yeah, I don't know how Kevin Durant got his Cybertruck, but I'm glad he has the same car as me. It definitely makes me feel cooler. So, love to see it. Y- these celebrity Cybertruck sightings are worth a multi-billion-dollar ad campaign that Tesla got for free, just because people wanted to use the product. So it's increasingly looking like the Cybertruck was kind of genius. People said it was ugly, it would be a flop. We're kind of seeing the opposite. People are kind of in love with it. It's just instantly iconic. And we got some numbers that are some estimates from Good Car, Bad Car for the Rivian R1T, and then we got the NHTSA recall notice for the Cybertruck. And it looks like they're already outselling the Rivian R1T in their first quarter. So not bad.
We have a thoughtful response in YouTube Live. Farmer George says, quotes Hans Nelson, who says Tesla is not focusing on the. I'm going to kill this. He says they're keeping quiet on Model 2 or the next gen vehicle and publicly focusing on the Robotaxi because they don't want to impact demand for Model 3, Model Y at this time, which makes sense. That's a reasonable way of saying it. Wes.
Yeah, three things. One, that is very reasonable. I can understand the Osborne effect. Two, Kevin may be a shareholder or one of his posse, if you will, might be a large shareholder. So that might be how he got it. That's how I got mine early, even though I was a day one reservation holder. I had to provide that proof. And then three, I do think they're the same platform because you can just make a robotaxi by depopping all of the human interface controls. And depopping is very kind of an obvious solution for building a vehicle without human controls. Like you can just package the chassis for those parts and then just not populate them or put in blanks, to fill those holes where the controls would be. And I find that to be pretty obvious because it'll be very similar crash testing because those components won't be very heavy at all. So that shouldn't throw off the crash test. So anyway, that's my thought.
Omar.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Why?
I just wanted to thank Wes for that answer. I was trying not to get bitter about receiving my Cybertruck behind the MVP.
All right, Fryo.
What are your thoughts on this 8.8 announcement being something that they've kind of paired up with Ford or some other OEM on, to where they're licensing FSD, but they're also going to rely upon them to create hardware?
Omar.
Well, I think any licensing deal would probably be a few years out from implementation. So if they announced a deal with Ford or something today, it'd probably take 3 to 5 years to make it into a new vehicle. But I hope that Ford does sign a deal with them and that Rivian and others do. The comment I was going to make was that launching a $25,000 profitable EV while maintaining the current business is extremely challenging. Like people sometimes make it out like it's simple, and all Elon has to do is say, let's do it. And then suddenly they'll be able to just make a $25,000 EV profitably here in North America, even though nobody else has been able to do this. So there's a lot of challenges to consider. One is, of course, the Osborne effect. I mean, this new car is going to be better in many ways and half the price. It's going to be smaller in size than the 3Y, but it's going to have things like steer by wire. It's going to be more efficient. It's going to have all the latest and greatest everything, right? Tesla never compromises on their cheap vehicles. They put the latest and greatest in there. So it's going to be a really great vehicle. But of course, in the early phases of the ramp, it's going to be unprofitable. You don't want a situation where people are buying a cheaper car that you're not making money on instead of the Model Ys and Model 3s that you are making money on. And when you just think about the volume forecasts, even with the aggressive goal of 520,000 units a year run rate by mid 2026, that still leaves you in a situation where your Model Y and Model 3, Model 3 output is probably even going to be greater than that. And Model Y output is going to be at least double that or more. So you're really looking at 2027, 2028 before the next gen platform actually has the volume, with the Mexico and Berlin and other Asia facility coming online, that you can actually, I think start to deliver a $25,000 car in volume. So having a robotaxi or a van vehicle that's a higher value vehicle that's not just differentiated by its selling point as the entry level model, and using that to ramp up the platform before then, starting to produce a $25,000 car, it could make sense for a lot of reasons. And it could allow them to then, once they're ready, ramp up production of this compact very quickly because they have the production system in place, possibly even in multiple locations to be able to do that. And all the parts are ready. They've been validated. They've been ramped up in higher value vehicles. And now that production's humming, they're ready to sort of get that entry level price point and do it without compromising the core business.
West 6.
Hey, this question is for Wes. Wes, did I hear you right that you have received your Cybertruck, and that was because of your share count and participating in the share program from Investor Relations?
Yep. I got an email. I filled it out. I sent in the paperwork. Then I got another email that said that I had been approved for it. And then 2 days later, I got a delivery notice. And
Can you
then
give me
I
some
picked up.
dates? Sorry.
Yeah. So let's see. I think it was the 23rd where I got the letter, filled it out same day within an hour. I got the notification on the 27th that I was approved. On the 28th, I got a notice that I could take delivery before end of quarter. And then I asked if potentially I could wait because I was going to be out of town. They said, well, we'll give you the next one that comes in. And I was like, no, I'll take that one. So I got that on the 30th. There you go.
And is it all-wheel drive?
Yeah, it's not a Cyber Beast because they're not making those yet. So yeah, just the all-wheel drive. Next 3 will hopefully be Cyber Beast.
I've got a Cyber Beast, and it's been 4 weeks since I provided the paperwork to investor relations, and I haven't heard anything. I saw online that Martin said, Biesca, what I'm pronouncing that right, said that they haven't gotten back to a lot of people because they're a little bit behind. But so I was a little surprised to hear from you that you've already received it. So that's great news.
Yeah, this was. Yep. This was before that hold. So yeah. I think if you filled out the paperwork, and you've already done that via Say and Plaid and all that, then you're probably good to go.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, because I'm sure you're going to get it soon.
Thank you.
Charlie.
Yeah, maybe a question for Omar, just the room around this vote on June 23rd. Is there any way that you guys have of like a forecasting this vote, whether it's going to be a landslide or not? I saw the tweet of Kogwan Leo. I think he has a couple million shares. Looks like he's going to vote no on the Elon's package. So essentially not allowing them to move to Texas and then allowing Elon to gain back 25% control of the company. So just trying to understand that if there's a way to just foresee a landslide here of just taking care of Elon, taking care of our guy, getting him back up to speed and motivating the company there.
Yeah, we talked about this quite a bit early on in the space. You're welcome to listen to it on X after the space is over, or you can go to YouTube Live. And during this space, you can rewind back and go to any section that you want. YouTube allows that. X doesn't allow that just yet. But Omar, would you like to kind of summarize Charlie's question for a little bit?
Well, we don't know what the vote is going to come out to. Nobody does, obviously, until the ballots are cast. I'm sure there will be some polling firms or something that may try and estimate it, and I'm sure if somebody did, that would be widely shared, but I don't have any insight. I'm sure there will be some polling firms or something that may try and estimate it, and I'm sure if somebody did, that would be widely shared, but I don't have any on both sides. So, like we said, it's really the most dramatic shareholder proxy vote ever.
Charlie, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you guys. It's pretty exciting stuff, but I think we all want one thing rather than the other. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that turn out for this. So appreciate the answer.
Okay, Priya.
This is probably a dumb question that you've already gone over, but is everyone clear on when exactly we do make that vote? Is that something we're waiting from our brokerage for? I just haven't gotten anything from my brokerage, but I assume it's something that's going to happen next week. Is that correct?
Omar?
I believe it's going to happen in May. And I'm sure you'll hear about it in X when it happens.
I had one other comment. So there's a lot of drama about the difference between the $25,000 car and the Robotaxi. Have we
Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Yeah.
West6, is there comment on the previous topic?
Yeah, April 29th is the date I heard that the votes will open.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the difference between the $25,000 car and the Robotaxi, have we talked about what if it's just literally as simple as attaching a modular steer-by-wire wheel and an accelerator and a brake pedal, which could be added or removed within minutes. So it's potentially the same exact vehicle and not this thing that's being delayed. or pushed back. Is that something? Sorry if I missed anything about that, but I'm wondering if this is much ado about nothing and it's literally the same vehicle. That's all I
Omar?
got.
Sorry, I got to meet up with AI driver. He's here.
Okay. Are you going to live stream this, or how do you want to handle this?
I'm not sure. We may live stream it, but I need to talk to him. We need to take care of some business. I'm gonna help him with this car a little bit. Give him a little something.
Okay.
something.
Okay. While you do that, okay, and just come back and let us know if we should end the space, or do you want to have the space on while we do that? And we can kind of do whatever, however you want to handle it. Wes, go ahead.
From the last question, that's my expectation. It'll just be depopulated for the human controls. From a vehicle engineering standpoint, it's kind of the simplest way to attack the problem. You save this packaging space for the human controls, and then you provide blanks that for any robotaxi that doesn't have the controls. That's the quick answer.
All right. Let's see what else we had on the menu for today. Man, it was really cool. We had Fred Lambert in here earlier. If you guys want to listen to the section where Fred Lambert was having a conversation with Omar, that's like within about the 30-minute mark, I think. You can go to YouTube Live and check it out now. You can't wait until the end of the space to go back to it. But that was the first. That was the first, which is amazing. That makes me really happy. Wes?
Yeah, it's super cool. Is there like a quick summary of that interaction?
Yeah. So Fred joined at the beginning of the space, and I saw him, but we were talking about Robotaxi economics, and then he left after 5 minutes. And I kind of DM'd him. I said, "Hey man, you're welcome to come back and come to speaker board." And he said, "I'm not really interested in Robotaxi economics because Robotaxi aren't here yet." And then I kind of, after that topic was done, I guided the conversation to what Fred wants to talk about, obviously. And so I DM'd him again, and he joined, and he came up to speaker board, and gave us a little bit of overview of his thoughts on Elon's Trump, and his conversation with Leo, and some of his views around retail shareholders. And then Omar responded. The conversation was very respectful. They went back and forth for a couple of times, and Machine was on the board as well. He cracked a bad joke. It was so bad that I'm not going to repeat the joke. But that was about it.
Cool. Thanks for the summary. I just wonder if Fred and anybody else affiliated with his.
Wes, you're cutting off. Wes cut off for me. Did you guys hear what he said?
We lost Wes.
Okay, Ken?
I'd just like to go back and correct the record on one thing that I said. I said that Elon wasn't going to abstain from Proposal 3 on the move to Texas. According to the proxy documents, he is abstaining. Him and Kimball will be abstaining from the votes on the move to Texas.
Wow.
I have a theory on that.
Good. Thank you for correcting yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Why would he abstain? Number one, this whole proxy statement was written by lawyers, and through the proxy statement, they keep repeating the phrase that they have the potential to be sued on this vote. And I think they really do expect to be sued on this vote. And if they vote to move to Texas, they have that 100 million preferred shares that are going to be distributed to Elon. Most likely, that's not written in stone anywhere, but that's just my theory. And so it would be a conflict for him to vote on that. and it would take an argument away from any plaintiff's attorney that he was conflicted in this vote.
Okay, thank you. Wes, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I jumped from another Wi-Fi.
Okay, what were you saying?
Sorry, it was really interesting to hear your summary. Thank you of Fred. I was just wondering if he and the other people that are on help running his site have gone back to long on Tesla, because you probably remember the history of that interaction.
My understanding is that Fred had a long position. I'm not aware of Fred selling his position in Tesla.
Yeah.
That's number one. I
At
know
one point,
the
go for it.
owner of the website has sold, I think. So I'm sure they traded it here and there, but that's kind of besides the point, though.
It's just good to see him interacting again. That's my point.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I want to kind of keep it that way for this first time. Short.
Yeah,
and
I
sweet.
agree, because I really do miss his voice, because he used to be very interactive, and then not so much, really focused on the website and kind of phrasing things in interesting ways. But now I feel like there's been a shift, so I appreciate that.
It's that simple. Go ahead.
Hey, just saw your note from earlier. Just wanted to chime in. Are you guys still discussing the comp package, or is that?
Dude, that was like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are still discussing it. So it's good to have you here. So
Yeah.
I just want your perspective on how you believe institutional investors will think about this. Let's assume for a second ISS and Glass Lewis comes out and says vote no. Okay. How do you think they go about how do institutional investors think about those two proxy firms?
Yeah, I think any sentiment towards the Elon Musk leaving the business, I think will be negative. I think what will require more information around is if he's told no, what does that then mean for any additional comp structures going forward? So it's conditional, right? The first part will be, if there's a no for sure, we can say that's fact. The second most important question will be what does future compensation look like for the next 5, to 10 years, and can that make up for it? But the reaction I think would be negative. I would be very surprised if any, big position long-term investor has any positive reaction around this if he gets told no.
How do you think they're going to vote?
They vote to keep them. If you're along the business and you have no other reason to be, short or nothing else, I think you'll be voting to keep them on board. You're paying 10% of what already is diluted shares, right? This compensation package, I don't believe it's been affected yet on the outstanding diluted share count. It's pretty much the same as it's been for the past X amount of time. We know that. Everyone's modeled that. So if you now throw a wrench in there and say, okay, you get back 50 billion through that dilution, but now you have a bunch of uncertainty going forward, and the PE ratio growth aside, a portion of that is Elon's intelligence. If you remove that, it's a much more uncertainty, which people do not like already.
So you think it's going to be a landslide, or do you think it's going to be a close call?
I honestly don't have a strong. I haven't done the math yet myself. I haven't spent enough time this week. I've been swamped, but I would hope it's going to be at least towards a landslide versus a close call. That'd be my initial view. I'm not sure what the retail sentiment has been. You'd probably know better than me, but I would think it should be more towards a landslide than not.
Great. Good perspective. So on the retail side, Machine made a real good point this morning. He said most of the retail shareholders in the company, probably invested early on and they made a lot of money and they're happy with Elon's performance. Only those who came in, or mostly those who came in after 2020, in the last couple of years, have only seen kind of declines in the stock price. And those are the kind of people who are not so pleased, and some of those have already sold. So that can be a smaller portion. In Leo's case, it's a different story. Fred told us today that Leo invested pretty big early on before 2020. I know the one thing that he didn't mention was Leo went through a bit of a margin call during COVID times. And then he kind of bought, I think, call options and stuff, replaced his margin position with call options. So, so that's the general understanding of the retail side. A bit divided, but it's good to hear that you say institutional investors will probably vote mostly along with Elon.
Yeah, I mean, just to understand that further. So people that do, I always care about the opposing views more, right? I don't want confirmation bias. Why are people, at least I've told you, what's their view as to why they wouldn't be voting for in terms of why they believe potentially outing Elon? I'm not saying that's true, but say they do believe that is now on the table, right? Say they believe he'll be a bit upset and for whatever reason may want to part ways. Assume that is true. What's your view as to the $50 billion for historical work not being worth it per se?
Sorry, was there a question in there? I
Yeah,
got distracted with something.
what's their logic, I guess, when they're saying that he's voting against not just him, but in general, whoever you've spoken to the past few days? When someone's saying I'm going to vote no, what has been reoccurring themes as to why they're going to vote no?
I think it's more of an emotional thing rather than like, for example, the one thing I haven't heard ever from anybody who's saying they're going to vote no is who are you going to replace him with? Like, if you tell the guy he's not going to get paid and he leaves, who's your backup? What's your backup plan? Haven't heard that yet.
Yeah,
I think it's more of a reaction to the kind of declining stock price.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm fairly confident on the institutional side. Like you just said, that uncertainty of what will be next, the odds that is going to be expanding to the P ratio and the 10% swing in Tesla's enterprise value seems to be happening every 2-3 weeks. So I don't think the magnitude is worth it, right? So sounds like we agree.
Grant?
Yeah, I was just going to say on that topic, I feel like there is some people may think that there were, I don't know, ethical issues surrounding the way it was presented. And I think that I actually don't know how to feel about this, but I think some people feel like maybe he's not the right person to lead Tesla at this point. I have a lot of respect for Elon. I do think he's a great entrepreneur, genius in a lot of ways, visionary. But I just don't know if he's really a good CEO for a $500 billion company.
Yeah, and you're not a shareholder, right?
No, I'm not.
Yeah. So how are you going to vote your non-shares?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying I'm answering the question of what some of these people think. I think there's a real chance that it doesn't get passed personally, but that's just me.
It's that simple.
Yeah, it's a good perspective. I just want to understand it. So, say I agree with you, right? Say maybe he's not emotionally is not where we'd like him to be, right? The more important question becomes, I guess, Grant, not being facetious, just curious. Like, would you say there's someone better to replace him? People oftentimes say it's a $500 billion company, therefore the type of CEO you need for that business is very different. I actually disagree because most archetypes of a $500 billion company's roadmap for growth are not comparable. They're usually more steady state, 5 to 10% per year, trying to grow some margins. And they're not really at the forefront of innovation as, maybe now Microsoft and Google, but historically, right? So in terms of replacing him, who do you see that would fit a bucket of operationally very efficient like Elon is, but also understanding massive tailwinds on the, AI innovation side, and also the ability to manage a $500 billion company? Like, do you have any names you think could replace that person? Because institutions need to do that work. They have to understand what's the next person going to look like and can they execute on this business plan? Because I've done brief research. There's no one comparable to my guys that can replace that hole, but not sure if you have names in mind.
No, I don't have names, but I mean, I also don't believe, Elon is a singular sort of person, but I don't believe that anyone is truly, truly irreplaceable. I mean, one way to frame it is it's not about what this person needs to do, but it's partially what this person can not do. One of them being incredibly alienating political tweets around the clock. I mean, that's a win right there. You can definitely find someone that won't do that, I hear your point. I think it's fair, but I don't think it's impossible for someone else to lead this business.
Yeah, and I agree. I think most companies will always say this person can't leave and then quickly replace. I guess to you, though, do you think the market's reaction will be positive or negative? Because that's probably going to be a faster way to the answer here.
Yeah, I agree. So someone had said earlier that, and I agreed 100% that the vote in my mind will be heavily predicated on the stock price. You know, if it's like $100 a share, and I'm not saying that's my prediction. I'm just saying if it were to continue to trade down a ton, that's the sort of thing where institutional investors are going to be like, yeah, we need some change here. We need to shake things up. Like, I'm not going to give this guy a bunch of money. You know, if the stock price goes back up, then I think removing him would mean a large downward swing. If it's already been going down, if it's at 100, I think they could remove him. It would probably go up. That's just my take.
Yeah, just the last comment, we can switch topics. On the institutional side, so that's not how they're viewing this decision, right? How it usually works is that you have your board. I know in this case, there's some contamination, people think, but when you look at a CEO, the main thing you ask is, we had a vision, a roadmap. Was this CEO doing what he could to execute on this? Now, I know we may all think, based off of his tweets and thinking that's somehow indication of actual time spent on the business, that maybe he has not been. But institutions will have these conversations and they'll think through, do we think he's the right person for the future, not where the stock is, and can he execute? The stock is actually oftentimes irrelevant unless you're in an activist position where you need to get people to swing vote with you, in which case you leverage the stock price. So I would just say, don't weight the stock price too heavily here in terms of the institutional side, because they're looking forward, not backwards.
I will agree a little, but honestly disagree a lot if the price is $100 and what Elon has produced over the last multiple years is like a negative 75% outcome. I mean, that's the sort of thing that does piss off institutional investors. People trying to understand why, you know, the companies in the spot it is will be potentially pointing fingers at Elon.
Okay, well, let's see. So,
do you mind?
yeah,
Sorry. Yeah, just on the stock price, a simple example of this. So say the stock ran up, you know, in theory, 10x over the past 4 years, and then the next 2 years it's down 30% per year, 40% per year, whatever it is. And the actual internal plans, the internal business has actually gone almost perfect to plan, aside from some speed bumps. You think that would then be negative, since the past 3 years reaction by external parties would say, you know, bad performance? You would view that as a reason to out him, or would you view the actual business fundamentals as more important, you think?
I think the decision is the function of today, not 5 years ago. I don't know how to say it more clearly.
Okay, Grant, let me ask you this. What do you think will be the poll? What do you think is going to be the voting result?
Sorry, I missed what you said.
What do you think will be the result of the vote?
I think if the stock price is below 125, I think he is not going to get this comp package. I'll just say that. That's kind of off the cuff, but that's
What if
about
the
what I
stock
think.
price is? What if the stock price is here?
I think there's a 40% chance it doesn't get voted. If it's at 200, it's definitely getting voted. I mean, that's how I think about it. That's just my take. I don't know if I'm right. I'm shooting from the hip here. But I do think the price is related to the outcome.
It's that simple. Do you agree with that statement, that the price matters that much to the outcome? Where if it's $200 a share throughout May, let's say, when people are casting their votes, versus $120 a share, do you think it switches from yes to no?
No, I can't speak to retail. I agree retail is a bit more sensitive probably. On the institutional side, it's a very, very low chance, almost 0%, that impacts their decision making. It goes back to, they have a board, they have a roadmap, and they say, has he done what he needs to do on the business metrics, not on the equity metrics? And then B, going forward, do we agree with his vision, and can he execute on it? That's the core thesis. Historical anecdotes of stock prices and swings is not going to be as material.
Yeah. And let me ask you one thing. So I'm not going to say it. Green Power, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm a shareholder, just to so I have a few thousand shares. It's not a big, you know, I'm not like a big fish like the other guy, but but at least from my
Irrelevant. Just get to your question. It's irrelevant.
Okay. What I'm saying is that I think that what I feel is more that I'm being blackmailed in some way. So the vote does not give me any reasons why I need to to be generous enough to give Elon the payment, and also there is no plan on what happens if he leaves, right? And I do think that there is somebody that can replace him.
Who is that? Who is that?
The former CTO.
Who? Oh, you mean JB Straubel?
Yes.
Okay, why didn't you just say his name?
I forgot his name.
Yeah, actually, I had this discussion before with somebody, and you know, I have my own views of the topic. If JB could be the CEO of Tesla, and happy to hear other people's thoughts. Grant.
Hey, oh, I was just gonna say, in response to the board thing, though, I just would highlight that the reason we're re-voting on this package is because this is not an independent board. That's just an important thing to remember. I bet institutional investors are definitely clamoring for stronger governance and potentially a changeover in board members.
Yeah, Grant, you're making a lot of assumptions. You're making a lot of generalized statements. You're speaking for these bucket of institutional investors. Every time I give word to you, it's lots of speculation and just unwarranted conclusions, and it's really not welcome. So it's for a second warn. For a second warn today. Second warning today. Okay. And the reason why the reason that's incorrect. Incorrect.
That is absolutely correct.
The reason why on this board, frankly, is because you're a bear. And my patience for kind of allowing bears to be up here despite talking nonsense is wearing thin. Okay.
Okay, I disagree, but that's okay. I'm gonna.
It's that simple. Go ahead. Okay.
No, I think it's good to walk through these questions, right? I guess, Grant, going back to you to understand. I said earlier, I agree. There is the rhetoric about the board being contaminated, but what would you, or where do you think Elon went wrong in his vision? Where do you think, as an operator, he's, I guess, maybe done things that you would disagree with? Removing the emotional side of tweets and stock price. Actually, as a business, is there something you can sort of point to, or you'd say, hey, I think he went wrong here, 4680? Just curious as to why you think institutions would say, he maybe not be the right man to lead the company forward.
Which institution has ever said that? Which institution has ever said that?
Well, I don't know that they say that publicly when they feel that, but
so they just DM you and say it to you. So now you're like bringing it to and saying it. All the institutional investors said that.
I think that I definitely am, thinking about this differently than other people. I don't think that I'm like 100% right. I've tried to be fair about the fact that I'm shooting from the hip in some ways, but institutional investors will look at, and it's that simple. I appreciate that you tried to carve this out, but I actually really do. I think more than other people believe that the brand has been damaged by a lot of the more incendiary things that Elon has chosen to do. He's totally allowed to do all that, but I do think that rankles institutional investors. They want a boring person who's going to helm the ship. And at a point when you get to be a big enough company, that's what you get.
That's not correct. That's not correct. You're like, institutional investors want a boring person. This is not correct. Not a single institutional investor has ever said that. And this is what I mean by speculation, putting words in this bucket of institutional investors. And I warned you twice already. You're done. Adam.
Hey guys, I just wanted to maybe be in more in the middle here, since I don't know if you've heard me before, but I am a bull. I have had stock since 2012, sold probably a quarter of it to a third of it. But I heard the question of what's he done execution standpoint, that institutional investors would not appreciate or like from his track record standpoint. And so I can't say how well they pay attention to things. I don't know. I guess I would be disappointed about it the more I learned. But if they did, I think some key things that have stood out to me were how he operates it with deadlines. He doesn't know if they're achievable or not when he creates them. And so sometimes they are, and it produces amazing results. But in my opinion, more often than not, they're not possible. And then it puts the company in very, very tough situations. And so some examples of that I remember related to 4680 is he planned for Berlin and Austin to both be 4680 lines from the beginning. And in Austin's case, he was so far off on the date that they had to basically go with that pilot line with the Model Y and then just tear it down and just switch to 2170. The amount of delay that there was to get Model Y to volume when we were at the most critical point of sales of Model Y and backlog, and there was no cars getting produced because he beta tested 4680 years before it was ready on customers. And like, I don't know it. I'm not super smart on battery tech, but like, I think I've learned enough to know that you need a ridiculous amount of time to produce like a new cell. And to try to turn that around that quickly, it was just, and just didn't seem to make sense to me. And it definitely costed the company in a big, big way. And other areas too, you know, the way he operates like that are super risky, taking USS away from cars, like probably a year before the vision software was ready for parking sensors. You know, like that stuff hits the media unnecessarily and like hurts car sales. All of a sudden you see Consumer Reports and other things saying this car doesn't protect you when you're trying to park it. You know, like it's just pointless. It's just stupid. Like why not wait just a little bit more until stuff's mature? And I just think that it's a constant, I'm going to just throw something out there and see if it sticks. And sometimes it does. And like I said, it's awesome. It's why the company is where it's gotten to. All the cars everything's been super successful up and through Model Y. V12 has been super impressive. You know, we can all talk about the accomplishments all day, but I would say far more than not, they're failures. And it's just like, if the institutions look at that track record closely and they start weighing those pros and cons and when things have executed and when they haven't the past like 3-4 years, they're going to see a lot of failures. But I don't know if they look that close.
Okay. Wessex.
Yeah, just to add on the last speaker, you know, I think we all need to realize that we don't know what Elon knows. And to say that it was stupid to take the sensors away from the cars, we don't know if things were changing with technology and this was an important decision. And he knew this for sure and then took the risk of the public, you know, beating, if you will, that you described. I think we got to be really careful. You know, when you think about people running companies, we'd have no idea what's really going on there. What appears to be stupid might be brilliant. So just something to think about. It's not like we know, you know?
Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Yaman, for your spaces. I just wanted to address some of the concerns for the last speaker, Adam, as far as the decision regarding 4680 from Germany to Texas. We have to be cognizant that a lot of that change happened with the IRA and with incentivizing battery production in America to get the tax credit. So it was actually genius of Elon to try to divert resources from Germany to Texas to try to take advantage of the IRA. And then with regards to the ultrasound, car insurance is really like skyrocketing. And the fact that Tesla moved to a plastic painted bumper and removing the ultrasound sensors actually decreases the cost of repairs, which is a common complaint for EVs and just cars in general. So some of these are not just made willy-nilly, removing ultrasound sensors. It actually helps with repairability, the cost, and the speed of repair for Tesla vehicles.
Adam.
You're cutting out a little bit on the ultrasonic sensors. I don't see that as a problem for any other car company. To me, it's a cheap part, but that's just my opinion. 4680 was not at scale when he used those in the cars. It did not make any impact on volume.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Yep.
Tim, you have to stay on mute where you're not talking. This is a rule. The rules of the space apply to everybody. Okay? And if somebody increases moderation work, I will kick them off the space. Adam, go ahead.
So when he did the first production line in Austin with 4680, the volume was so low on 4680 it didn't even matter. So it wasn't genius because there was not enough volume. It was just a completely unnecessary risk. And if product's not ready, it doesn't matter if it's available anyways. If it's not ready for prime time, you don't ship it. And sure, maybe that's a personal preference, or we could disagree with that. But the fact is, there wasn't enough volume then, so it didn't matter. And so there was no reason to move the entire build the first main production line in Austin on 4680 because there was no volume. It was not genius because there was no volume. And the 2170s also come from the US and also qualify for the IRA. That once they realized 4680 wasn't ready, couldn't build the volume, plus the battery wasn't where it needed to be, they just switched the Nevada-based 2170 anyways. Sure, Nevada was still scaling. I get that has probably improved, but they both qualified for IRA. So the IRA argument I don't believe is valid at all. And like I said, the volume wasn't there anyways. And they end up scrapping the whole line anyways, starting over with 2170.
All right. I'm going to focus on some quality discussions. It's that simple. How are you?
Good. Pretty hectic week, but Friday came quick, so good. How about yourself? How's the week been?
Good. Busy. Lots of things happening at the same time. But the spaces have been really good. So that's good. What do you think about the price action going on right now in Tesla?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke, I think, over a month ago. I told you I was buying for the first time in a long time. I said, probably some downside pressure coming, and here it is, right? So I'll be adding on Monday to my personal portfolio, a good chunk, I'm thinking. And then, honestly, unless there's some great guidance that Elon provides, I see it probably trading sideways, or you could see some downside pressure as well until that 8.8 reveal if nothing really changes. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, people are putting a lot of kind of weight on what Elon's going to say on this earnings call. But do you think, he can't say, how much do you think that matters beyond a few days after the earnings call? What he says on this call?
I think it matters a lot for once, more so because not for me so much, but I think a lot of people are uncertain, right? It goes back to, I'm thinking more on the institutional side, more risk averse, and they don't like that. They're seeing right now, this Model 2 news. Myself, I'm taking it as a nothing burger. I think they're completely going after that model and it will come to market. If he gives guidance that is not the case, for instance, even my own thesis will change. So I think it's just them wanting some assurance that, hey, the price action's been horrible, but roadmap is still as is. Nothing's fundamentally changed. Okay, great. Let's maybe add some more shares. But if he comes out and gives some guidance on the AI focus side of the business and mentioning, Model 2 questions don't get addressed properly or things like that, I could see people heading for the doors and saying, let me just wait and see versus taking on this risk. Because into 8.8, my view at least, I still think that was partially reactionary. I could be completely wrong. I have no insight. I don't know this answer, just to make that clear. But I think the street also agrees. They're saying I need some guidance and I can't wait until 8.8 because that could be a nothing burger as well. So that's my long-winded answer.
So what would be a good example of a good guidance that Elon can say on this call? And what's a bad example?
Yeah, good at just speaking to whether it's a next-gen platform or the Model 2 development. If analysts ask those questions, being fairly direct as to, we're still accelerating our product roadmap as we've always promised and already is clearly laid out to you guys. Again, not to me, to the street with their roadmap. And then, to me, even that is more than enough. But as long as he doesn't say to the question of the next gen roadmap, he says, does that even matter in the context of full self-driving? Our V12 has gotten so, you know what I mean? As long as that tangent is not made, I think that's honestly more than enough to get people relaxed.
Yoda?
Yeah, a couple things. I think one, the tone and manner of the executive team on the upcoming earnings call will be very different. In the past few earnings call, you almost get the sense of, kind of very casual, almost mockery to some of the analysts' questions, and I think that tone is going to be serious. It's going to be wartime executive, being very careful in terms of answering questions. Um, and I think I hope that Elon really walk us through his thinking around if he does, we don't know, but if he did prioritize the robotaxi, why? As I have just posted on X, I believe there's only one scenario in which he would do that. And again, that scenario means that FSD is feature complete, it's ready, and that regulatory approval is in sight. Note that when we say ready, it doesn't mean it's ready on 8.8. It just means that when the production line is ready, let's say, year and a half, 2 years from now, that both of those things would be ready. And if that's the case, then the right decision to make now is to prioritize the robotaxi over the compact.
It's that simple.
Yeah, just understand that this is one topic I think I'm a very different view on. Why are they mutually exclusive? Can someone just elaborate to why this has been a view? Because I don't understand why you can't do two things at once here. They're not intersecting.
Yoda?
They can do both. I think the the difference is far beyond just the steering wheel and the pedals. And so whereas and again maybe someone can post the diagram that I posted so everyone can see it, but in all other scenarios, you would in fact prioritize the compact because you don't want to delay the volume production of the compact. If you know that regulatory approval is not going to be ready or FSD is not ready. And so I think they will end up making both, but there's a limited number of resources and engineering talents. And what Elon is probably going to say is that he is just trying to shift the best talent, the best resources over to one side of that sword.
Yeah, Omar had a really good response earlier about this. It's that simple. And he said, he played a clip from last earnings call. He talked about how, a couple of the people from suppliers reached out to him. And he also referenced what Franz said in response to a question in one of the events on stage. And we've all seen that clip. And Franz said, don't believe everything you read. So there's a bunch of indications that both with the steering wheel and without steering wheel still on tap, maybe they're focused on Robotaxi first. But
Yeah, I mean,
I
Elon
think
himself has said he's reviewing the plans for the line. This is months back, right? I think in 2023. But I guess Tesla Yoda, just understand that at the details here. So, say you have two separate vehicles. Is that what you're saying? One for Robotaxi, one for call it next gen platform. Just to start here, is that true?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of the actual build of that vehicle, why would they not be rushing to compress cost as much as possible across both? And assuming the interior is the main mechanism that will change, why would most of the R&D not be accretive to either or project and therefore have only a small incremental difference on probably brain damage to specify in one versus the other? Like how much is transferable versus not is the main question here, because to me it seems pretty high.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but imagine if Microsoft has, Office Suite, and from a product perspective, it's built, the spreadsheet application, the email application, Word, PowerPoint, etc. And someone says, let's build, the next Office product. So imagine, let's say if Word wasn't out there and they were, planning to build this next application called Word. That sounds really logical for Office for Microsoft to work on that product. But let's say if someone at Microsoft saw that ChatGPT was gaining traction, and that Gen AI was about to change the way people interact with these applications, and so uh, should they go ahead and build Word, or should they spend their engineering resources on integrating ChatGPT into, uh, I guess, not only Word but all the other applications? So yeah, I think on the surface it seems like it's just why not build both, but I think in absolute terms, there's a sort of finite engineering talent resources in a short run, whereby you might need to go all in on one first, get that launched, get that right, and then to your point, working on the steering wheel variant may not be all that hard. It's you're sort of 80% of the way there, but I feel like tackling the harder variant is maybe the focus initially, and then putting on the steering wheels and making the modifications to build the steering wheel variant could be the second.
it's that simple.
Yeah, let's just separate, I guess, the two. So we have hardware and software, right? So let's just solely focus on the hardware. If you go Robotaxi or you go next gen platform, we can agree the optimization for both is reduce the cost per vehicle made, correct? You would agree with that, Tesla Yoda?
Yes.
Okay. So the next question is, why do you think the composition or build on the hardware side of a next gen platform versus a Robotaxi platform, the actual hardware, why would there be a very big difference in the actual fundamental changes to the manufacturing line to everything else that would, I'm just trying to understand that a bit better. I don't have the, I guess, the insights you may have here.
Yeah, I think right now we're thinking both vehicles are identical. One is just stripping out certain components. And I don't have the answer, but what if they're not? And um, there may be certain hardware requirements that is in one, but not in the other. So that's probably what I would say.
But you'd agree the majority is probably going to be directionally the same, 80, maybe 90%, maybe at the nuance optimizing. Right. So I guess that's my point, is that I've seen briefly on X this week when I've been on people discussing that it's a binary event of like either yes or no to either platform. I just haven't heard, I guess, a reasoning to how you're not going to get probably 90%, 80% R&D to the same thing. And sure, the last, 5 yards may be slightly different. That's my, I guess, main question still.
Yeah, and I guess when we say prioritization to the robotaxi, are we referring to the hardware team, or let's say the software team? Um, And again, we don't know. Yeah,
Well,
we don't know
it's
what's going
irrelevant.
on
It's
internally.
irrelevant, right? Because software team, I doubt, is going to compress the cost of the next gen platform. The R&D to the hardware is probably almost 99% difference in software, I'd assume, right? So I don't think that's sort of my point. I'd focus more on the hardware teams. How different is their attention going to be placed? And if that's not very high, then I think it's a moot point to discuss either or product, right?
Yeah, I guess then, maybe objectively, why would you think Elon would have to make the privatization over one or the other? So assuming everything is 90%
That's my
plus
point.
the same.
That's my whole point here, right? From the start, I said I don't think it's a mutually exclusive decision to make. I think it's actually going to pretty much be the same for the most part, but we'll try to understand why it wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, and I guess what my diagram is trying to say is when you look at external factors, if there are technology advancements around AI that demonstrates that FSD is really going to be ramping up, going to be ready, and that from a regulatory approver perspective, there is sort of insight that there's certain jurisdictions that will be allowing Tesla to operate vehicles, robotaxi services, then you would want to kind of focus on that product.
Wes and then Wes 6.
Hey, Tesla Yoda, it maybe it sounded like, or it did sound to me like you said two different things. So maybe two questions for you. I don't know your engineering background. It'd be good to know that. And then I'm interested to know if I did hear two different things, like, do you think Robotaxi is built on the same platform as the supposed low-cost car? Because it kind of sounded like you didn't at first, and now it kind of sounds like you do. So I'm wondering what your actual position is.
Got it. I think the Robotaxi and the compact car is two variants built on the same platform. I think from a hardware perspective, they are going to be very similar. The Robotaxi variant obviously won't have certain things like steering wheels, pedals, etc. On the software side, I think there may be, more that goes into the Robotaxi variants. In that there may be additional interfaces that enhances that Robotaxi experience or makes that experience possible, such as interacting with the Robotaxi through voice, uh, maybe heads-up displays or other interfaces. That to me is sort of the net new engineering that needs to be done if Tesla is trying to prioritize robotaxis. The other factors would be you would prioritize the robotaxi if there's visibility on the regulatory approval side that certain jurisdictions is going to approve for that for Tesla. If you don't see that, if you see the opposite, you would prioritize the compact car. So I think that's kind of the point. I'm not an engineer on the hardware side, so my day job does involve training LLMs and working on chatbots and working with larger language models.
Gotcha. So maybe in a world where FSD is solved hypothetically, and eventually you'll get enough miles for regulatory approval, right? I think we can both agree that that's going to it's a necessity. So there's some amount of miles that regulatory can't ignore, whether it's 1 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, trillion. There's some amount of miles. I would argue it's somewhere in the billion to 2 billion range that can't be ignored. But you don't need that to actually start a service, right? I mean, that's what Waymo and Cruise is. So I'm I'm still kind of trying to understand where you're coming from. Because and I'm sorry for the chimes; they're kind of loud. In a world where this is solved, in a world where regulatory approval is going to happen, why wouldn't you start to make a robotaxi before you would make this low-cost car? Because they're going to be used 5 times as much. And I think we can probably agree that that's going to be a truth as well. I don't think that's a discussion point. But why wouldn't you do that first is my question.
Sorry, the chimes. Why wouldn't you do the which first, Wes?
The robotaxi, the driverless vehicle, the vehicle that does not have human interface controls.
Okay. I think I'm saying you would do it first if there is approval. Are you saying before approval? Why wouldn't you do it first? I'm sorry, didn't catch you.
No worries. I think what you're saying is what I'm thinking. I've gotten away from the chimes. Because at the end of the day, that's my supposition, is that's what's happening. But the robotaxi will come first. It's the same shared platform from a vehicle engineering standpoint. All the internals are the same. You just depop, you don't populate the human interface controls, and you put blanks in their place. And driverless version,
sounds like you guys pretty much agree.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Okay,
Wes
thanks,
6.
Wes.
Hey guys, I think I understood it's that simple's point, and I agree with him that it's really not a binary decision in large part. I think this routers article that Elon quickly denied has really gotten just way too much traction where we're all kind of speculate, is it this or is it that? However, while we're here, I think there are some hardware or some costs that are non-software to consider. And some of those are outside of the car. And for example, will we have wireless charging? If that's the strategy, what's the cost of implementation to put that in, not only in the car, in the robotaxi specifically, and you might put it only in that one, not in the other model. But then what about the facilities where they do charge? And then secondly, I don't know the answer to this. Maybe somebody maybe someone's thought this out. I haven't really thought about it much, but where are these cars going to reside when they're not being used? So just some thoughts there on extra costs from a hardware standpoint outside the car.
Who wants to take that? Yoda, Wes?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question. My bad.
Well, it's not that you can't hear it. I mean, maybe I guess that's what it is. But in my case, these are those. But I think the end of it was, where are they going to reside when they're not in use? I don't know, just parked.
Oh, gotcha. So I think people know there's an inductive. They made an inductive IP purchase, right?
Yeah, charging, parked in some outside the suburbs.
Yeah, there'll be an autonomous charging area, right?
Yeah.
That seems pretty easy to me. Like super easy, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it just comes back to the cost question that that simple had. What are the extra costs involved with building this car or the robotaxi specifically? What are the capital expenditures you have to consider? And I think there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to, or maybe some infrastructure that needs to be put in place that's non-software that could be quite expensive when you roll it out across the country.
It's that simple.
Yeah, no, just to be super clear on this, it's not so much what's the additional capex going to be. It's more so that no matter what outcome you believe will be true, the path will be almost the exact same. So, say somehow in 6 or 9 months from now, FSD is more preliminary, like more preliminary than we thought, and it gets postponed. They haven't, diverted their entire business as a new vehicle and sort of lost all potential revenue from the next gen platform. So that's the more important part that the street and even myself cares about, is that they're not going all in the sense of this has to work or not, because to me it's the same roadmap in turning on the hardware side, just some small iterations and additional capex down the future. That's the most important thing in the next 12 to 24 months probably.
Eric? Eric?
Hi, yes.
There's an elephant in the room about Robotaxi and releasing Robotaxi before the 25K car. That thing is called winter for about 30% of the countries in the world, or specifically Canada. I don't see how prioritizing Robotaxi, which would probably only work in California and not most of the northern part of the country, for like half the year.
Yeah, personally, I've driven up with
Right.
FSD.
Just as a reminder, for some reason, is it because it's Friday? I have to remind people you have to stay on mute when you're not talking. All right. I think I'm just going to end this case. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care.